Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to be doing a live stream. Now, this one's going to be a long one. It's going to be a long live stream, so get your Gatorade, your popcorn, and whatever else you need to get, because we're going to be going through the Bill Simmons podcast, the entire thing that features Nick Khan. We're going to go point by point because going through it, because for starters, I didn't listen to the whole thing. So I didn't have time to listen to it. So I didn't take any notes. So we're just going to have to do this thing straight up. I'm going to play the audio. If I hear something, I'm going to stop and we're going to talk about it. And that's the best way to do it. So that might end up being the first hour, maybe even the first 2 damn hours of this live stream. If we all get tired and everything starts to taper off, then eventually we may do the Jay Briscoe portion in another video, depending on how much of this it is. I want to do this in 2 hours and 30 minutes. I want to be done by midnight. But if it takes us to past midnight to get through the entire Nick Khan interview, that's fine. I don't have anything to do tomorrow, so I'm in. So Park and Hunt, AJ3, thank you all both for being here. Thank you everybody else who's listening. Again, as usual, whether you give me 1 hour of your day, 10 minutes, 25 seconds, I absolutely, positively appreciate it, and hopefully I made it as entertaining as possible. So Nick Khan dropped an atomic bomb over AEW, WWE, etc., and there's a lot to discuss because he did the Bill Simmons podcast. Bill Simmons asked some tough questions. He asked about Rita Chatterton. He asked about Vince McMahon, Vince's return. He asked about pretty much everything. And Nick Khan answered these questions, and Nick Khan has become public enemy number 1 for wrestling fans online now. I started referring to him as the underboss. He's hated almost as much as Vince now. I've seen so many people talk about how he's a snake, he's this, he's that. A lot of them are just virtue signaling. You know how they do. But I didn't listen to the thing myself, so I don't know what in it he said that was so terrible. So we're going to figure it out together. Is everybody okay with that? Everybody all right with trying to figure this thing out together? Let's see what's happening. Yeah. So we're going to do a long video. I've already queued up the Bill Simmons podcast to the point where Nick Khan's going to come in. For everybody who's going to be a little bit late, sorry to hear that. But you guys are probably going to have to listen to this thing. If you've already heard the Bill Simmons podcast, sorry, you're going to have to listen to it again. If you've never heard it, well, then we're in this joint together, and we're all going to learn together, which I think is a superior way of doing things. I'm not a reporter. I report things sometimes if I have something, but I'm not really a reporter. I'm more a commentator. So, and I'm not a low information commentator either. Like, I always try to think about things from more than one perspective. So, I know that there has been people who have been asking me about the Steven Crowder Daily Wire thing. I will go into that some other time. It's a heel program as far as I'm concerned. I have absolutely no interest in it. But it's been interesting watching it unfold. Who is Bill Simmons? Well, Bill Simmons is Kevin Nash's welfare check. Wait a minute now, come on. Don't dump that in my lap and I have to go and look for it. I've already got a show planned. Tell me about Kevin Nash's welfare check during this at some point in this show. All right, so Bill Simmons was one of the architects of ESPN. And now he has he's a big sports guy. So now he's, of course, doing a podcast, and Nick Khan was on it. All right. He does sports and business, so he's very interested in the business part of the sport. And I think this was the best way for Nick Khan to address a lot of the concerns that people had about Vince McMahon's return, what's happening, what's been going on. Going to a professional like this guy and talking is a lot better than sending anonymous stuff to the Wall Street Journal or talking to like this guy or Ariel Helwani or somebody like that who, even though I know Ariel was a little bit shaky, especially when it comes to the trustworthy factor. He likes to be the center of attention a little too much. But this is going to be just Bill asks a question, Nick Khan answers it, and it's going to be very, very interesting. So once again, hello everybody. We're about to start the audio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Nick Khan in the WWE offices in Los Angeles. It is Tuesday, 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. So if anything happens over the next 12 hours, don't blame us, as I always say. Kind of a topsy-turvy last couple months for you guys. Been in the news, all kinds of stories. There's been a board shakeup. You were co-CEO the last couple of years. Now you're the sole CEO.
I came in as the president of WWE, and then when this past summer all of those events happened, Stephanie McMahon and I became co-CEOs. She was also chairwoman of the board, and as of this moment, I'm the CEO of WWE.
Okay. So let's unwind this. Vince McMahon steps down a year ago. All these revelations about different NDAs from years ago, goes in the Wall Street Journal. He steps down, and it seems like he's gone. Then he goes on SmackDown. And just watching him from afar, the whole thing seemed insane. It was like, is this guy stepping down or not? Why is he on a show? Is he still around? People are wondering if it's a work. And now you have 10 months later, it really is starting to feel like the real-life version of HBO's Succession, where Vince is now, he did what seemed to be from afar like a board coup d'etat. Stephanie stepped down. There were rumors you were going to sell to Saudi Arabia, which I never believed. But from we're watching this afar, this seems insane. What is it like to be in the middle of this? Does it seem less insane? What are the misnomers? How real is all of this?
So from the inside, it's not that insane to me, but it's also, again, the word insider, when you're on the inside, you sort of see things that might be coming and know what might be coming. My thought has always been there's only one boss at WWE, and it ain't me.
We're off to a rousing start here. There's only one boss. Everybody knows who it is. I might be the CEO, but I ain't the boss. Now, for those of you who don't know, the board can fire the CEO. They're the one who's hiring the CEO. So Vince obviously stepped down as CEO and chairman and everything to prevent from being fired, of course. He's essentially forced out. Now he is in a position as executive chairman that he could actually fire Nick Khan if he wanted to, which of course we don't see why he would want to. But it's pretty clear who the boss was and always will be. And it ain't Nick Khan. And it ain't Triple H. And it ain't Stephanie. And it ain't Linda. It says McMahon. But it's the same as it always was. It's Vince McMahon. He's the boss. He's going to do whatever the fuck he wants to do. He's going to do whatever he want to do.
Vince is obviously the founder, creator of the company. He's also the controlling shareholder, which is, that's not a work term.
Right.
That's a legal term of art. So I think it was always my point of view, always Stephanie's point of view. At some point, he would come back. I think the way that he played it, to me, was smart, Bill, in that he went away for 5-6 months, which people, meaning the audience, seems to like when somebody does that. And he came back and took control back of his company as the control shareholder. So it is the public's company, as a publicly traded company. but with that controlling share, gave him a lot of authority, and he used it, and I applaud him for doing so.
Okay, so a lot of the wrestle journals, they are very upset about this part. The part where Nick Khan kind of gives Vince credit for disappearing for 6 months to kind of let it die down, let some goodwill build. He kind of disappeared, and 2, his triumphant return. So a lot of people are like, he resigned in shame. How could you do this? It was never Vince McMahon's intention to give off the idea that he was conceding defeat. Even when I did my video about Vince, I was like, my God, hell has frozen over. They got Vince McMahon to back out of a fight. That's not a Vince McMahon thing to do. Now we see he was just being coy. He was just playing possum. It was a strategy. It was a tactic. It was a scheme. It was all just let's let the heat blow over, and then I'm going to come back. The whole thing about, morals and integrity, the question is, when it comes to Vince, all the stuff that he was accused of, if he had did any of it, then all of the vitriol towards him will be completely justified. But if you sit down and you ask any of these people, what evidence do you have other than these stories? Did you believe these things actually occurred? There's nothing. Like, what evidence do you have that Vince McMahon showed up with a briefcase full of money and Jimmy Snuka's murder case disappeared? It just evaporated. What evidence do you have? Did anybody see the briefcase? Who was the witness that saw the briefcase full of money? What color was the briefcase? What denomination of the bills were there? Were there like stacks of hundreds? Were there 20s in there? Were there 50s in there? How much money was it? Were you able to track said money from Vince McMahon to somebody's campaign or to somebody's retirement, to somebody's pocket? Did somebody go on vacation to Japan or Europe or something like that? How can you trace that Vince McMahon bought off the police or whatever? Now, that's not an absurd question to ask anybody. Because guess what? The cops and the feds find out about dirty cops all the goddamn time. They find out about dirty cops all the time. Oh, you were taking money under the table. You were doing this. You were doing that. They find out about this stuff all the time. So that's not an unreasonable question to ask. When it comes to these rape accusations, it's not an unreasonable question to ask. What evidence do you have for these things? So Vince is not arguing his guilt or innocence. It's merely he knows that he's a lightning rod, and the company, a lot of the stuff that was going on with him was distracting from the company, distracting from the business, and in some ways it was hurting the business because it was simply too hot. A lot of these people who run corporations, they want to sponsor each other, or you're the parent company of something. You want these corporations to be as quiet and as boring and as profitable as possible. You don't want it to be tumultuous all the time. And I said it before, like, that makes WWE look completely schizophrenic. The constant churn of board members, the constant churn of top executives coming and going, and all that kind of stuff. That stuff makes them look bad. It makes it like it's poorly run. Like, you can't keep a top level executive. You talk about how great they are and how much faith you have in them, and then 6 months later they're gone. That doesn't make you look very good. That kind of stuff makes people skittish. They're like, I don't want to deal with that. Then when you start tacking on top of this, these sexual allegations, well, the block got hot. So Vince decided, I'm just going to back off for a little bit, let these things blow over. And as it was said here, I'm pretty sure Nick Khan, just as much as everybody else, knew Vince was going to eventually come back. In what capacity, I think, was the question. But I don't think it's just the young generation don't have morals or integrity anymore. I think a lot of their morals and integrity are twisted, and it's being manipulated, and they're actually, it's very difficult to say, because actually I think a lot of young people, they want to be moral, they're just not sure how to be. Let's get back into this thing.
So, I mean, the behavior, especially some of the stuff in the NDAs, many people would say he shouldn't come back. That should be it. He should leave. When he owns the company, it's basically up to him. Like, you can have as much public pressure as you want, but it's his company. The reason that he wouldn't come back is if he felt like it would be hurting the value of the company, the prestige of the company, people's perception of whether they even want to be a fan of the company anymore. So why did he come back? Because it does seem like it hurts the company.
Well, so here's what I'd say. You and I had a conversation. I don't remember the exact time frame, but whenever the Ray Rice stuff happened in the NFL 8-10 years ago, whatever that was, and there were conversations at that point, not your point of view, not my point of view, that, is Roger Goodell going to resign? If you remember, he had a lot of heat on.
Yeah.
And I think you and I both concluded to each other, well, no advertiser has fled. Ratings aren't down. The product seems to continue to build. Why would he resign? Why would he do that? So I think that's more, keep in mind, I've lived in Los Angeles. I think, how long have you been in LA now, Bill?
20 years.
So I've been here since 2000, so 22, 23 years. Sometimes I think it's just a 3-mile radius of LA thing. Hey, step down, and you have to sort of be punished for it. It didn't used to be that way. So I think for somebody like Vince, and by the way, you and he are two different people, but you're both founder CEOs. And I think founder CEOs different than regular CEOs. So consider me for this moment in time a regular CEO. There's something about the founder CEO that sees the vision, sort of sees the future, can get there a moment in time before others can, and then everyone else catches up. So even, and again, these were whatever your private frustrations may have been at prior employers while you were trying to build something great, which Grantland was great and The Ringer is great. I think it's the same thing for Vince as a founder CEO. It's his company. So to me, WWE is Vince, Vince is WWE, and we're going to do the best we can to keep building the company.
I think that was very long-winded, by the way. That was very long-winded. It was so long-winded, I kind of forgot where he was going with that. But the idea that Vince is WWE and WWE is Vince, that's obvious. You don't need deep understanding of wrestling lore or of business to understand that Vince McMahon, this has been his life since June of 1982. All right. Since June of 1982, Vince McMahon has had no boss. He has run a corporation. He has always had employees. He's always had something to do. He's always had, all of his friends are in the business. This is a guy whose best friend was one of his employees, which is not a surprise that he has sex with his employees, because his best friends are his employees. He literally probably doesn't have too many friends outside of the business. This has been his entire life, and it was molded in that image. You can't separate the two, not really. You can try, and maybe in 20 or 30 years, it's going to end up like Walt Disney. Walt Disney Company isn't even about Walt Disney anymore. The vision of Walt Disney is dead. The company lives, but it's mostly a corpse. It's a soulless corporation. WWE's backbone and their soul is Vince McMahon. Once Vince McMahon is gone, it's going to be some member or some hand-picked successor of Vince McMahon who's going to try to continue that vision as much as possible. Once that person is gone, And then maybe once it's out of the hands of the family, especially if he sells it within the next year or so and it's out of the hands of the family, then you have the idea of it just being a naked, soulless corporation that was founded by Vince McMahon, but that guy is either dead or completely and totally incapacitated, and he has no influence on this thing anymore. Which we know Vince is not going to let happen. But the answer that Nick Khan gave on why Vince McMahon, why he came back, why come back, and he said, interestingly enough, the ratings wasn't affected. The sponsorships, the ad revenue was not affected. Essentially, no business metrics were affected when all of this stuff came out. But he felt like, I gotta fall on my sword anyway. I gotta face some kind of punishment in public for the things that I was accused of doing. Now, of course, it goes back to any type of accusation. Anything that you do in the face of an accusation is an admission of guilt to some people. When he resigned, it was some kind of admission of guilt. When it in reality was a way of, let's let this thing blow over. Let's disappear for a while. Like I said, Vince would have to be dead for 3 years before anybody believes that he's actually dead. You're literally going to have to go and check his coffin every 6 months to make sure he's still in it. But the idea being that what he wants is for the company to be able to function without the darkness that of the Wall Street Journal stories and all that kind of stuff dangling over it. So Vince stepped down so that the heat can blow over. And in my conspiracy theory, he wanted to ferret out whoever was the guy leaking stories to the Wall Street Journal. I think that's what he was trying to do. I think he figured, if I step down, whoever was leaking stories to the Wall Street Journal, whoever has inside information on me, will be able to figure it out, but I can't figure it out while I'm in there. You know, somebody else is going to have to figure it out. And since Nick Khan, we know that he's not anti-Vince. Stephanie, she's on the fence. You know, Triple H is also on the fence. I could see them going either way. But it was clear to me that this was a way of ferreting out the leaker. And they try to figure out who it is. And I think they found their leaker. And it was probably that Manjit Singh guy, if we're being honest. Because whoever I told you it's like the Godfather. Whoever comes, it's like whoever comes to you with the meat, that's who's the guy, you know? The person who wants to, the first one who wants to investigate and to look into this, that's the guy. You know, but it's interesting that Nick Khan just admitted it. Like, look, we knew this was going to happen. You know, he has a vision for the company that, you know, other people don't have, and he's going to take the wheel. You know, and I don't have a problem with that. Ali Hankerson says, quote, "The irony of AEW marks being stoked about AEW possibly buying them is that the money is going to go to someone they hate. Vince is going to walk away with billions, and Tony will only have a dead brand. He'll have a soulless husk of a brand. But they don't care that Vince McMahon walks away with billions of dollars. What they want is the scalp. You know, they want the pleasure of having defeated Vince McMahon, because nobody has done it so far. He's evaded. He's been Teflon. He's evaded all of the accusations. None of this stuff has had any real negative effect on his life. His reputation was already sullied for years and years already through wrestling media. And if you read any books on him, it's all just Wrestling Observer, Mike Mooningham, because nobody else really follows this stuff. Like the real business guys, they don't really touch wrestling too much. You know, and it's unfortunate. A lot of them don't really touch wrestling though. So a lot of the Vince McMahon narrative is formed by, you know, the activist wrestling media that's been going on. So the idea that Tony Khan is going to willfully, gleefully dump $6 billion, of which Vince McMahon will get I don't know what he owns. What he has 81% of the voting power, but he has like 30% of the stock or something like that. It's like an absurd amount of money he would get just alone, and that's just on top of being hypocrites about the whole monopoly thing. It's it's ridiculous. I don't think Disney would buy WWE, at least not right now. Disney is having its own problems, and I think that if somebody was a diligent um, wrestling YouTuber or journalist, they would look into all of the companies that are being suggested to buy WWE. They would look at them and they would say, are they in any financial position? And I think that outside of the Saudi fund, which probably wouldn't get it because what the hell are you going to do for TV? Endeavor's the best option because they just switched to their CEO and they've been having board problems, and Disney Plus is losing billions of dollars and they're losing money on the god damn it, the the theme parks. They're losing tons of money on the theme parks. The only thing that really draws is the Marvel universe for Disney. That's pretty much it. Comcast, they have the money. They're bleeding money with Peacock, but they have the cash, and it'll be an easy integration for WWE. So Comcast, because of NBC, and Endeavor would probably be the best options if they were going to sell it to somebody other than Vince McMahon. But I don't think anybody other than Vince McMahon would buy it. The UFC is owned by a company. And plus it's a completely different entity. It's a different industry. Like I thought, for instance, remember a couple of weeks ago where Stephanie McMahon was talking about getting into boxing, I thought maybe WWE would just jump in and start buying like some boxing promotions. And I remember talking to some guys about it online, like, hey, is it possible like for Vince like slide in and buy like Golden Boy or Top Rank or something like that? Maybe I doubt they will want to compete with the UFC, so they're probably not going to want to buy an MMA promotion. Besides, what MMA promotion are you going to buy? Bellator is already owned by CBS, I think. And it's interesting, but I really want to see where this is going. Let's see. AJ3 says, have the Khans ever checked their stock or investments? I would imagine they do. I would imagine they pay very close attention to that because that's where their money is. Ali Hankerson says, I watch wrestling show depending on how I felt about last week's episode. If last week's Dynamite was bad, I'm skipping the next week's edition. If SmackDown was a good watch, I'm tuning in the next week. That's one way of doing things. I always just tune into the show and see if I like it or not. I mean, if last week's show sucked, then last week's show sucked. That didn't have... Well, I guess my expectations would differ, of course. Because the previous week might suck, but they might have planted some seeds for next week to be very good. Which is what they usually do with Raw. Even though they never actually get to the point of Raw being good. I'm him 24/7. One of Vince McMahon quote, once a fool, always a fool, but you know what? You a damn fool. We'll do unrelated topics at the end, so Top Dog, please hold that. Let's get right into this thing again.
Can you walk me back to when he stepped down initially?
Yeah.
And the board, basically, it seemed like from afar, forced him to step down. Is that accurate?
I didn't see it as a force. I think Vince saw sort of the tonnage of things that were coming at him and us. And he thought, one thing he's always said, and you know this as a longtime fan, I'm a longtime fan also, he'll do whatever's best for business. And I think at that moment, whether it's bringing the Ultimate Warrior back 20 plus years ago or whatever that might be, I think at that moment in time, he saw what's best for business was for him to step away for a while. So he did. And he really did step away. So there was no, hey, why are you doing this? Or I wouldn't do it that way. It was, in my opinion, total freedom to Stephanie, myself, and to Triple H on the creative side. It's only been a week, but he really, I believe what he said publicly about, hey, I'm here to engage in strategic alternatives and the media rights. So far, the engagement has been that and other board issues. There's
And not the behind the scenes wrestling stuff.
Zero.
Sports entertainment, any of that.
Zero. None.
Okay. So Nick Khan is forming Vince McMahon stepping down as best for business. And it's basically exactly what I said, which is the reason why people step down from corporations when they're amid. Because, look, one of the things that you're taught when you're running a company or you're in a leadership position is that you are responsible not just for yourself, but for other people too. If something is happening to other people, somebody needs to fall on the sword. So in Vince's case, you have these incredible stories of rape and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it could affect the company. Well, there's over 300 employees in WWE. It's probably over 3,000. What do? Do you stare down the face of this thing and say, screw it? You know, if it causes harm to the business, it'll cause me no real harm. I still own it. And then you have to turn around because sponsors are fleeing or the TV ratings are suffering and the buildings are empty because people are just going to boycott you. Then you have to cut those people. You have to let those people go. And it make it seem like you're even worse than you were before. Because not only are you selfish, not only are you a rapist, apparently, in these people's eyes, but then you're also incredibly selfish. You would rather cut the little man than cut yourself. So in this situation, it's trying to make Vince sound all magnanimous. Like, oh, he took one for the team. The team needed him to take a dive, and so he did. Interesting. We all know this was just basically as a way of getting away from this thing. You know, just kind of a way of people will stop talking about it if I go away for a while. And it didn't really occur because they continued to follow him around. Even at his birthday party, they followed him there. When he was having a conversation with a former employee in a restaurant, there was paparazzi there taking pictures of him. He never really got away from it. As much as he tried to sort of enjoy his retirement, it didn't really give him much of a chance. There was still new Vince stories every damn week because Vince, much like Donald Trump, is a cash cow for the wrestling media. It's somebody who they can hit, who will, in Vince's case, not hit back because he's not going to tweet at you. Trump might, but Vince is not. Vince is not even going to acknowledge the wrestling media, which actually burns and bothers him a lot more than if you were tweeting at them. As much as everybody hates when Trump is tweeting, they hate more if Trump is ignoring them. You know, again, that's actually in some people's case, and I work in mental health. I'll tell you, when people want attention, bad attention will do. All right, that's just what it boils down to, and that's kind of how it is with a lot of these wrestling journalists. They'll put out a terrible story, and bad attention will do because at least you're talking about me. Good or bad, you're talking about me, you're discussing me. And that's a business model. So that's why you have to be very careful where you get your media and get your information. Because good or bad, if you click it, they got that view. And God damn it, if you show other people, you're spreading the virus. You know, typically wrestling media isn't taken very seriously, however. You know. But it's interesting that Nick Khan says that they had total freedom without Vince, dangling over their heads, questioning them. I believe this too. I think Vince was plotting and planning his big return and wasn't really giving a shit about Triple H bringing in Johnny Gargano and all that stuff. I don't think he cared too much.
None. And by the way, I made it a point, as did others, to see him once a month or so while he was sitting out. I think those things are important. And it's no different, in my opinion, than when other mutual friends of ours who have gone through hard times professionally, that's when they sort of need to hear from folks most that, hey, you haven't forgotten about them and you're appreciative of them and all of those things. So I think in staying in contact that way, which was mostly social and personal, There was never a moment of, no, do it this way or do it that way. It just didn't happen.
It's amazing that he's talking about sort of providing emotional support to Vince during this time, because he is being lambasted in the media. He can't go anywhere without people taking pictures of him. Which, you know, he's probably been dealing with that for a long time, but it seemed to happen a lot more since he retired than it did before. Like, I don't remember any random Vince pictures in the 90s or in the early 2000s of Vince, like, in a restaurant. People just taking pictures of him. I think that kind of stuff just kind of started to happen when he stepped down. But it's interesting that, you know, Nick Khan says, I talk to Vince once a month. I talk to Vince once a month. And said it was mostly social. Just a, hey, how you doing, old man? You all right? Do you want some Jell-O? Can I offer you some yogurt? What the fuck do you think they were talking about? What do you think they got in common? They was talking about watching Yellowstone on fucking Paramount Plus. Like, what do you think that they were talking about during this entire time Vince was sitting out? Oh, I talked to Vince once a month, just like everybody else did. Yeah, I'm sure you did. Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you guys were in regular conversation, and you were telling Vince all about this Manjit Singh guy, and you're like, how much of an asshole that guy is. Like, that guy's a jerk. Ah.
Were you surprised that he stepped down?
I was surprised in the moment. But once I thought about it for a couple of days, it made total sense to me. I wouldn't say it caught me off guard because, again, we were on the inside sort of feeling a bit of the pressure that was going on. So it certainly seemed, again, the right thing at the right time. Definitely surprised in the moment. After I digested it, it made total sense.
Were you surprised that he's started to inch his way back?
No. That's Vince.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows him who thought with a tweet, because I think he tweeted, you know, hey, I'm 77 now, time for me to call it a day or something to that effect, you know, when he stepped down. Anyone who believed that was permanent doesn't know him. That was never going to happen. But I'm appreciative of the fact that he gave it the 5-6 months, let the dust settle a little bit, and then coming back in the way that he's come back.
Interesting. Of course, that's true, however. You know, that was the one thing about it that I thought was very weird, too, is that he resigned via a tweet. Not official Vince McMahon letterhead, not a press release, not, you know, on television where he could have drew a rating and gotten, you know, a pop from the crowd or anything like that. He resigned via a tweet. And when you really think about it, that didn't make any sense. And that is not a way. But yeah, I think about Vince sometimes in the way that people think about, like, Napoleon. Or, you know, not to be too extreme, but like Adolf Hitler. Like a great man in history. You know? Like, sometimes they live to be old men and they die in their rocking chairs or they die in their homes surrounded by their family. And then there's those great men in history like Muammar Gaddafi, who is, you know, murdered by his own citizens and his head carved up, or Benito Mussolini, who's like stabbed by, you know, everybody around him like a Julius Caesar, you know? And you see like Hitler in the bunker or Saddam Hussein in the bunker. And, you know, Saddam's in the bunker when they find him. You know, Hitler is committing suicide. He got a gun in his mouth in the bunker, you know, hiding out. Resigning via tweet is kind of like that. It's kind of like Vince going to hide in a bunker. And you're like, wait a minute, that's no way for Vince McMahon to go out. And to be quite honest, I can see why he will return. Because why would he want to go out like that? And I don't in no way think Vince McMahon is like Muammar Gaddafi or Adolf Hitler. I'm just using them as examples. That in the midst of strife, you know, when the guy who has always been in control who has control begins to lose control. I'm just giving you some examples like Saddam, Gaddafi, Hitler, guys who were tyrants who had complete control, but then things start swinging the opposite way. How do you handle that? And one of the ways is you hide, and it turns you into sort of a coward. And that becomes somewhat of your legacy. That when things got tough, you didn't go down in a blaze of glory. You went down hiding out in the bunker, hiding under a pillow, and that was never going to be Vince, because for starters, if he was going to go out, it was going to have to be in a blaze of glory. It was going to have to. It wasn't going to hide out on Twitter. The guy barely tweets as it is, and all of a sudden he's going to resign via tweet. I didn't think about it at the time, but now that Nick Khan mentioned it, that is absolutely true. It's absolutely fact. Vince wouldn't do that. That didn't make sense.
How much of him wanting to come back had to do with the fact that the company did really well without him? I mean, you guys had a little bit of a resurgence creatively. I think in the wrestling community, people were super pleased with some of the moves and some of the pushes, and kind of felt like the snow globe just got shook. And in a good way, you flipped it, where AEW had all this momentum, and then all of a sudden by the end of last year, it felt like WWE had a lot of the momentum. And do you think that bothered him?
I don't think so. What do you think?
I think it bothered him.
Tell me.
I do. I think when you've created something, and especially something you spent 50 years of your life on, and you were the integral force of every decision that was ever made, and then all of a sudden you're out of it, there's part of you that wants to think, I was super important. Like this should kind of go downhill, and it didn't. It was the opposite. I think that's hard to deal with.
I get it. I think, again, having been on the inside, and keep in mind, as a publicly traded company, if there was an official succession plan, that would have had to be filed, a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think the succession plan in his mind is the one that he put in place when he stepped down, which was Paul Triple H runs creative, and Stephanie and I, co-run or help to run the company, if you will, with Steph, his daughter, as the chairwoman. So to me, I never got a sense from him of any sort of bitterness or anything like that. He seemed, for the first month of his hiatus, thrilled. And if you think about it, even from your own career as an outside observer of it, how hard you've worked, a month off would be fucking amazing. Right? I think he went to Italy, whatever it was, the things that we all wish we could do while we're in the mix of, let's say, quote unquote, empire building.
Yeah.
First month was amazing. I think by month 5, he was starting to get ready to return. And I think the strategic alternative process is a real one. I think he's hyped for it. I haven't seen any sort of heat from him towards anybody who's at WWE, with WWE. There's no commentary from him, certainly to me, and I've been in touch with him, as you might imagine, a lot in the past week. There's no, why did, Paul and you hire this, or why did Steph and you do that? There's been none of that.
At the same.
Okay. Bill Simmons is, I think he's got a good point. That's what a lot of people seem to think. And I think Bill Simmons is doing a really good job of being sort of the voice for like the wrestling media, who are like, oh, Vince just couldn't stand that things were going well without him. And I think we all have that ego, it's crazy the amount of people, and I used to hear this all the time, and I think I forget what it's called. It's a kind of a syndrome where you tend to believe that the job you do is very good and that the company will fall apart without you. What will happen once you're gone? And sometimes you're fed that stuff, Sometimes people will say, oh my God, you took a day off. Thank God you're back. Because when you were gone, this didn't happen. This didn't happen. Nobody did this. Nobody did that. This thing went off the rails. But then sometimes you come back and it's like, oh, hey, Jim's back. Welcome back, Jim. It was a well-oiled machine. You find out that you weren't really all that necessary. You might even find out that you were in the goddamn way. And that can be kind of offensive. That can be upsetting. So the argument that Vince would be upset by this. That, the company was doing well without him. Yeah. If anybody with a healthy ego would think, I don't know if this thing can run without me. But that's just a healthy ego. It, of course, downplays other people and their abilities to do what you put them in position to do, or to do what they were hired to do by the same company that hired you. But that's just your ego. And people do that in relationships. They do it in friendships or whatever. What are you going to do without me? You be face first in a ditch without me. That's just your ego talking. It's not necessarily true, especially if, you met that person a couple of years ago. You've been working at a place for a short amount of time. It's like the place existed before you got there. It'll be fine. In Vince McMahon's case, it has never existed without him. So it makes sense for him to have that idea that this thing will just fall apart without me. But I get what Nick Khan is saying too. Like, for the first couple of days, you're just enjoying not having anything to do. You're enjoying, it's the jailer syndrome, right? Where in jail, the guy is, of course, behind bars, locked down or whatever. But if you're the prison guard, you have to be there with him. You got to keep an eye on that guy. So you're there in some way serving time too. Just as much as Vince, was in control of the company was controlling Vince. It was his every waking moment for 40 some odd years. I definitely understand what it is like, what it could have been like, rather, to free yourself of that burden. And it is a burden. You don't have to answer any phones anymore. You don't have to, worry about who's doing what anymore. You don't have to try to chase down these punk writers. You don't have to try to talk to these ignorant ass, dumbass wrestlers anymore. You don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that other people, and just to get a break from that, I understand it. And I also understand when Nick Khan says, hey, 5 months in, old man's, rested. He got his rest the first couple of weeks. Now he's getting bored, and that's kind of how it is when, I remember when I was miserable at a job once, and I hated the job so goddamn much that I would have burned the place down myself. I hated that place so much. Then I heard that it was going out of business. I was celebratory that it was going to go out of business. I thought, great, fantastic, fuck this place. And then it shut down. I got laid off and I sat at home. And for the first couple of days, I had my nice little severance check. I was feeling good. I was like, excellent. This is fantastic. I don't have to get up and go to work today. It was fun. 2 weeks in, that check, there's no more money coming in. You're used to working, well, at the time I was working at a car parts factory. You're working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. 80 hours a week. Now you have to try to find a way to fill that time. You can fill that time the first week because you're going to do everything you couldn't do before. You're going to go to the mall. You're going to go to restaurants. You're going to hang out with some friends. You're going to get you a nice little chicken deed. You know what I'm saying? But then, once you've done all that, it's going to be like, wow, I need to put some more money in my pocket. Now it's going to happen to the average Joe a lot quicker because, you start missing them pay periods. That's not going to work out. But Vince could take 4 months off. The guy's fucking wealthy, fabulously wealthy. But it's eventually going to hit him too. He's got bored. And I don't believe this strategic alternative thing is real. I know Nick Khan, he's just saying that because I know he's an investor and, he knows what the market wants to hear. But I think that if at all, pretty much nothing comes out of this, or Vince ended up buying the company himself. I'm just going to stick with that. I'll be happy to be wrong. I don't care about being wrong. Again, I'm not a journalist or anything like that. I'm just a commentator. I would not be surprised at all if Vince doesn't decide to just, can I take the company private again if I wanted to? You know? That would be one way of looking at things. And then he could formally give the company to whoever he wants, because it's a private company at that point. That would be the smoothest way to give it to Stephanie, or to give it to his grandchildren, or give it to Shane or whoever. If he can just say, I'll spend all the money I made buying it back, and then we'll go back to being private, and then I could just give it to Stephanie. I could just gift it to Stephanie. She don't need the middlemen of the board of directors saying, oh yeah, you can do this, or worrying about people on the outside trying to oust her, get her fired, all that kind of stuff. She can do her own thing, you know? And maybe this is her time off, where, because she knows, hell, in the end, she may end up with the company again. Who knows? But I found that to be an interesting portion of this interview. Let's continue.
Same time, like, there was some pretty dramatic board shakeup stuff. He brought back Michelle and George, who he fired a few years ago. A couple people left the board. Why did people leave the board, and why did he feel like he had to do that? Explain the business piece of that to me.
I think from the business point of view, I think the George and Michelle thing, WWE, as you know, is a unique product.
Yeah.
And I think it's one thing that you and I have bonded over the years, is that you were a fan, you are a fan, I was a fan, I am a fan. And it's sort of like this insider thing. So I think with George and Michelle, who I have nothing but good history with, keep in mind, they left the company, I think 8 or 9 months before I joined the company. So this was not a, hey, let's bring me in while he moves others out. I think it was a deliberate process by him over that course of 8 to 9 months to figure out who he wanted to try to have in the seat. But they know the company, and they're insiders, and there's a shorthand with them. So I think as he engages in this, potential transaction, to have folks there that know the company, that know, hey, maybe certain things that happened in the past shouldn't have happened, or in a modern day point of reference culture, which I always try to look at these things from, Bill, that, hey, certain things that were acceptable years ago aren't acceptable now. I think over time you can evolve with these things, and the modern day rules should apply to modern day. I don't think it should apply to the past.
All right, so he's talking about, he's being very vague here, right? He's talking about modern day rules for modern day issues, but past rules for past issues. And he could be talking about anything. He could be talking about the non-disclosure agreements and the relationships with women and that kind of stuff, having sex with his employees, that kind of thing. He could be talking about that. He could be talking about some of the financial issues that maybe they were ignorant of, such as spending your own money, but it benefits the company, so now the company has to go and redo their books. Or it could be some other governance issues that we don't know anything about, or stuff like that. Saying that George Barrios and Michelle Wilson has institutional knowledge, that goes without saying. They've been there for a long time. They're trusted advisors. Makes sense for him to bring them back. Why would you come back with anybody else? Of course, the wrestling media has labeled them yes men because they don't know who they are, really. And anybody who will partner up with Vince got to be a yes man, because that's the idea that they've been pushing for 30 years, is that everybody's a yes man. Okay. That being said, I think the vagueness of it tells a lot about what he's talking about. And I think a lot of the relationships with employees, the inappropriate relationships with like female employees, is what he's talking about. Because we all know that in history, women like to have sex with their boss. I mean, it's a fact. It's a very well-known thing that quite often women treat their workplace like a dating app. They're trying to marry up. They're trying to date up. The higher up the food chain you go, the better off you are in the woman's eyes. You know, you see doctors banging their secretaries. You hear about it all the time. And Vince, you know, is a guy from that era where it was common for you to have a wife and then you were banging a secretary. You know, people act like it was a long time ago. It wasn't. You know, it's only been recent years where that kind of stuff has been definitely frowned upon. And now it's something that you absolutely, you know, cannot do. 30 years ago, nobody gave a damn if you had sex with your secretary. In fact, it was probably, if you weren't having sex with your secretary, your boss was having sex with your secretary. Somebody was. Or trying to. Before we started building I'm not sure if it's Camille Paglia or what's her name? I forget the young lady's name, but she referred to it as the sexual harassment industry, where we have this paternalistic view of full-grown adult women who get involved willingly with their bosses and turning them into victims. They're basically big children at that point. And that's why I don't understand why people get upset when they say women are tall children. It's like either they have functional brains and they can make their own decisions, or they cannot. If you admit that people will make their own decisions, then you have to admit that people will make decisions that you don't like. The Harvey Weinstein thing and the R. Kelly thing stand out a lot to me in these situations. Again, if you saw something, you know, in like Surviving R. Kelly, you'll see that these teenage girls were hopping on airplanes all on their own to fly to meet R. Kelly. Sure, they were underage. That part can't go unstated. But they were old enough to hop on a goddamn airplane by themselves. You know, when you have these young actresses who were willing to bang Harvey Weinstein in order to get a nice role in a movie, you weren't sexually assaulted. Now, that's completely different situations, you know? Like, under no circumstances can you bang a 16-year-old girl, even if it's legal. It's completely and totally unethical for you to have sex with to be 30 some odd years old. Having sex with a 16-year-old girl, that's gross. You probably had your veins peeled out of your body like a shrimp for doing something like that. But at 16, you're still old enough to know whether you want to have sex or not. At, 22, you want to be in movies. You look at this ogre and Harvey Weinstein, and you say, if I have sex with this guy, if I become his favorite girl, he will put me in movies. And then you do that. And then he does his part. He puts you in movies. And now you're 46. You're not as hot as you used to be. You're not going to give back any of the money you made having sex with Harvey Weinstein. None of that money goes back. But you get to go on TV because now you don't get to play the starlet anymore. You're somebody's mom in a movie, or, the roles have dried up. Now all of a sudden, well, it's time to complain. And these things happen all the time. Monica Lewinsky, she was an intern when she, did what she did with Bill Clinton. Nobody thought that Monica Lewinsky was sexually assaulted or raped or sexually harassed or anything. The question was, did he force himself? And I haven't seen any evidence that, he was forced. But if you look at Monica Lewinsky today, she will look back on that as if she was taken advantage of, because she was not allowed to make her own decisions, even though she made the decision to go to college. She was in college. She made the decision to go intern at the White House, to apply. She was old enough to apply to be an intern at the White House. She knew if she could have sex with the president or not. She became famous for the dress. And it's not misogynistic to ask the question, are women adults or are they fucking children? Not every woman is your fucking daughter or your fucking mom. All right? And that's how dudes are being taught to see women today. Every woman is either your mom or she's your fucking daughter. And it's like, no, sometimes she's just another adult human being. She's doing whatever the fuck she want to do. If she wants to fuck her boss, who are you to try to protect her from it? Get out of her way. Let her do her thing. Because she's not giving back any of the treats. She's not giving back none of that stuff. And then nobody asked her to give it back. So Vince is coming from this era where, hell yeah, he's banging his secretaries. We knew he was banging his secretaries. It was pretty well known during the steroid trial that Vince was banging one of his secretaries. The young lady who, she was subpoenaed by, I believe it was the prosecution, that she knew where the mini fridge was where Vince kept his steroids. And she was, quote unquote, delivering steroids to Hulk Hogan from Vince's mini fridge in his office. She knew where Vince kept his steroids. And, you know, they had a good explanation for it. As far as we were friends, we share steroids. But everybody knew that Vince was fucking that girl. It was not something that was hidden. So Vince been banging secretaries and paralegals or whatever. Again, this has been his entire life for 40 some odd years. All of his friends are in this business. Some of his best friends were people who worked for him. He didn't have much of a social life. He probably wouldn't even be married if he had not been married and had kids before he bought the company. You know? This is the kind of thing that happens because you're human beings. You have to treat women like adult human beings. They're not your sister. They're not your daughter. They're not your mom. They're not your cousin. People make decisions that they want to make. Yes, I could agree with you that if somebody sends a note or makes an implication that if you don't have sex with me, you're fired. Okay. Provide, you know, that somebody made that threat. Provide that, you know, this sex happened under duress. If you cannot provide any evidence that sex happened under duress, then you did it because you wanted to. You can't come back 22 years later, 25 years later. Oh yeah, I did the casting couch, but I really didn't want to. I wanted to do it all on my talent because you're too late. Oh, I was a young girl. It's like, are you crazy? If you were old enough to buy cigarettes, if you were old enough to buy liquor, if you were old enough to drive, if you were old enough to vote, my God, we allow you to vote and you can't say no to sex? Then why the hell do we let you vote? Vote for what? You're clearly too immature and too stupid. And I think that should be the case. If you don't think a 22, 23-year-old woman don't old enough or do not know enough about themselves to whether they want to have sex or not, then why the hell do we let them vote? Why the hell do we let them go buy expensive cars? Why do we let them get on airplanes? Why do we let them become pilots? Why do we let them in the military? Clearly they're too immature. I was taken advantage of. Are you kidding me? That's bullshit. You can do anything every other adult human being can do. That means including saying no if you don't want to have sex. Otherwise, if you want to treat 25-year-old chicks like little girls, then get them out of the workplace, stop letting them vote, don't put them in the military, because clearly they can't handle it. If you can't handle social interactions, then they shouldn't be in it. How long do I think Vince and Linda have been separated? I would say several years. You know, I would say several years. I'm talking over 10. I think it's been over 10. I think the last time they were really together is when Linda ran for office. And Vince was kind of there with her. But even then, I don't believe at all that they were close. You know, like you hear these stories that Vince would stay up all night in the office and Linda would go home. You know, you would think that, okay, somebody's got to be there with the kids. You know, somebody's got to be there. But this has been Vince's life. And Vince talked about it in 2001 about the affairs. The idea that Vince was, just now starting to have affairs in his 70s is like, no. There's stories of Vince banging secretaries and female wrestlers and stuff going back 30 years. It's only been in recent times where that stuff has become rape accusations or sexual harassment accusations and all that kind of shit. Because there's money in it. Take away the financial incentive, and you probably won't hear about any of this crap ever again in your life. This stuff would probably plummet if they couldn't make any money off of it. If I loathe to say there should be a law, but I think if you suggest that somebody sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, or raped you, you shouldn't be able to make any money off of that. It should be straight criminal case. Period. You bring a criminal case or nothing. Either put your name on it, face on it, criminal case, or nothing. Fuck all that 15 years later, I'm going to file a $50 million lawsuit or whatever. No. Because by then, everybody's over it. Nobody's thinking about you anymore. Nobody even recognizes or understands where they were at that time. None of that makes any sense anymore. It's stupid. The further you get away from an incident, the less likely you are to remember it. So I don't buy it. And then what we see is women can have a bad date and that becomes sexual harassment or sexual assault or whatever. I'll never get over the Aziz Ansari situation. He took a chick out on a date or something like that, and she just started acting like, and that killed his career too, by the way. I haven't seen that guy do anything since then. He didn't do anything major. He didn't snatch her by the head and throw her in the bed or something like that. That sort of stuff, it's weird. But Nick Khan is right. Vince comes from the 1950s stereotype of a businessman who is a workaholic, and he comes home. The kids need to be clean, the house needs to be made up, everything, but he's probably going to step out to have a beer with the fellas, and then he's really just going to bang his secretary. Or he's calling Sue into his office and bending her over the desk. Either or. And yes, that stuff is unacceptable. Whether it's morally, legally, it's unacceptable.
All right, counter.
Please.
It seemed like he wanted to get more of the board on his side, so he moved out the three people probably who voted against him and moved in a couple of people that he liked. So what is the business reason to do that? If he's already has the controlling stake, why does he need a more favorable board to him, or am I reading that wrong?
So I think it's a nuanced thing on the sales process, and here's what I mean by that. Traditionally, so if you're looking at, and I'm sure you are, the News Corp Fox potential remerger, you've seen that a special committee of the independent board has been assigned to oversee that process and to determine whether that's what's best for the shareholders. This is different. With the controlling shareholder, Vince is going to run that process. So to have board members in who understood that with the controlling shareholder, this is going to be the way it is, and people who would embrace that, I think ultimately that was the determining factor.
But if Vince just said, I'm going to sell WWE to anybody, like I'm going to sell it to Netflix tomorrow, couldn't he just do it? Does the board ultimately have any say? That's the part I don't get. If he's the controlling stake, what does the board even matter? Why even have a board?
And by the way, to your point on, hey, I'm paraphrasing here, but it seems like he got friendlier, board members in last week or whenever that was. I think the misperception always was that this board 6 months ago, 6 years ago, hey, they were just being puppeteered by Vince. Was not the case. As you saw it this summer, it was a very real board. It was a very competent board. I believe George and Michelle, obviously real, more than competent people who understand this process. But no, my understanding is even as a controlling shareholder, as long as it's an unaligned, fair process, if you will, the controlling shareholder can control it. If there was some handshake deal or he only wanted to declare, hey, I'm a buyer, not a seller, I'm going to buy out the other shares with some sort of financial partner, then it would be the board controlling that process. So that.
Okay, so it's a little bit different then. So I guess Vince can't buy it because he would have to change his stance at that point. But then again, couldn't he do that? That would be a nice little follow-up question for Bill Simmons. And I'm very glad that he mentioned that because he's telling Bill Simmons, look, Vince is selling the company as the controlling shareholder. He wants to control that process. He has every right to do so, to see if that's what's best for shareholders. Now, of course, I am still of the opinion that Vince McMahon is using that as an excuse to get into the chair, and that eventually he's going to be saying, well, we didn't find any suitable buyers. We didn't find any suitable partners. There's not going to be mergers and acquisitions. There's not going to be any selling. So things are just going to putter along as it is. And then maybe next year or something like that is going to switch to, I'm Vince McMahon and I'm willing to buy this company. I'm going to buy out the other shares. So I don't know, but I think this was very illuminating. And it killed my conspiracy theory. My conspiracy theory of Vince wanting to buy the company himself has been killed by Mjolnir wielding Nick Khan because it's a different process. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I'm gonna hold on to it. Just like somebody who goes on FanDuel and votes and puts money on the most ridiculous game possible. I'm still going to hold out hope until Vince McMahon is in the ground that he will eventually try to buy WWE. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. That's what I'm gonna say. I think in the end of this thing, Vince McMahon is either going to A, maintain what he has, or B, make some kind of inroad into maybe having more. Look, he probably could have bought out the shares of the other people if he wanted to, and probably could have waited for the stock to go down in order to do so. But let's continue. I feel so bad now because my conspiracy theory isn't really working out.
So that's not what he appears to be looking to do.
Well, so you go backwards. Triple H, who seemed like he was running everything creatively, or at least was a huge force, and he gets kind of shoved to the side. He had some health issues, to be fair, but I think people were surprised. NXT was Triple H's baby. That kind of basically gets the plug pulled out, but it's still going, but it's not nearly the same. I thought it had so much more momentum 4 or 5 years ago. And then Stephanie leaves a year ago, or it takes us, she's going to be a mom and the whole thing. And then Vince steps down, and all of a sudden, Paul and Stephanie are back, and you're running it, and things are going well. And now Vince is back, and Stephanie steps down. This is hard to keep track of.
I understand.
But was Stephanie's whole thing, I care about this company, I care about my father, I need to help out? Or why did she step down? I still don't get that part.
So two things on that. Number one, it's important to anyone listening to this, if you're going to join a family business and you're not inside the family, as I am not inside the family, stay out of the family business. Right, that's rule number one. And by the way, I know you're a fan of the show Succession.
Yes.
You referenced it, so am I. I was saying this to my wife this weekend. When you watch that show and you see all of the family members and everything that goes on, and you see the outsiders in the company, and you look at those outsiders, the non-family members, you say, what an idiot. Why are you working there? I guess that would be me.
You'd be like the lawyer who got involved with the Culkin character. Yeah.
Correct. Not Jerry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Not Jerry.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, but who's? Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Right. So, to me, that's obviously on a side, but I don't get involved in the family business. That is rule number one. Just as if you were in some dispute with a family member.
But when you say family business, you're talking like family stuff, not actual business.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Sorry. I don't get in the family side of the family business. It's not my purview. I don't insert myself. I don't try to insert myself. I like to consider myself, instead of a pot stirrer, someone who more simmers the pot with these things. So that's number one. I don't know the intricacies of, each detail.
So you don't even want to know. You're just out.
It's not my business.
Yeah.
It's just not. That's number one. Number two, keep in mind, and you mentioned the Paul Health thing, and I know Paul has talked about this publicly. That was as traumatic as I've seen a friend of mine go through that didn't result in death. So, and I don't think Paul has undersold it because he's been very factual on it, but it was literally, I remember I was talking to him, it was on a weekend. I said, hey man, you sound out of breath. You okay? He's like, I might have COVID. I'm going to go get checked out, this and that. Next thing I know, Stephanie texted me hours later saying that, hey, he got rushed to, I believe it was Yale Medical Center, the part of the heart called the Widowmaker, and I don't know the exact, term for it. You're right, was blocked, and he had to go in for emergency surgery or emergency procedure. I remember seeing him a month after that, and it did not look like physically the Triple H that we all knew. And I don't mean the muscular part and all of that. Even in his post-career part, it just looked like a different person.
Like the life was out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was scary. It was scary for him. It was scary for Stephanie. They have 3 school-age daughters. Scary for them. And I think Steph made the move that, again, you, me, any of us, if we could make it, would make it. If your spouse is down like that, is, hey, I'm just going to take a moment here. Leave of absence. And then, boom, things shifted. I would always kid with her in public and in private. It was the shortest leave of absence in the history of corporate America. I think it was less than 3 weeks.
Wow.
And when she was asked, she got called by her dad, Vince, and I was on the phone to, hey, here's what's going on. We need you to step in at the time as the interim CEO. No problem, Dad. I'm in. And then once the board made it official and Vince made it official, again, co-CEOs with her as a chairwoman. By the way, her work as an executive was off the charts, phenomenal. And she's great people. So it was easy. Work's never easy, as you know, but it was easy working with her. And I think when she felt, hey, my dad's come back now, again, without getting into the family side of the family business, I can step out. That's what she did.
God damn, Nick Khan. Answer a question directly, please. He gives you way too much information. All right, so him saying he doesn't get involved with the family part, that's common sense. Everybody should know that. Especially you don't want to get involved with the goddamn McMahons. If any family is feuding around you, if the McMahons is the last ones you need to be sticking your nose into, you just stay away from that shit. All right, get out of there. But him breaking down why Stephanie stepped down the first time, because Triple H was physically not the same person that he was before. It was a very traumatic situation. That all makes sense to me. That all makes sense to me. As I've seen people not go through the sort of physical transformation that Triple H went through, but sort of the emotional transformation that Stephanie had to go through. If you have a sick parent, sick spouse, you have to be strong for them. And then all of a sudden, they start to feel a little bit better. You have to now kind of fix or find your own center. Because then you were worried about losing them. What am I going to do if he dies? What am I going to do if, as far as work? Am I ever going to go back? It does become a very difficult situation. And Triple H is still, even though he's up and at 'em, he still might not be the person that he was. So I get it. Though I am very suspicious when Nick Khan says that Stephanie's work was knockout phenomenal. I'm like, I don't know, man. That ain't what we were hearing. Well, clearly something, she was doing something right, because the board voted her in as co-CEO. So clearly, this was a tough board too. So it wasn't like, a cupcake board full of all of her friends, which, I'm pretty sure it probably wasn't that far off, but it wasn't like a total cupcake board. It's interesting, as far as I'm concerned, that Stephanie got the vote of confidence to go back and be the co-CEO, and ended up on the outside again. But I like that Nick Khan is smart enough to stay away from that shit. That's intelligent.
Well, it seemed like for a few months there, she was going around, she was meeting with a bunch of people, and it was kind of the make everything okay again tour with a whole bunch of different
See how you still
sponsors,
have your ear to the
networks.
ground on these things.
Yeah, but she was just, things got a little crazy there, but we're here to right the ship. And when I heard that, I was like, Vince isn't coming back if they're doing this. If she's going around and meeting all these leaders and different people, this means to me that this is a new era of the company. But now it's an old era of the company again. Do you think Vince learned any lessons over this time, or were we just going back to where we were a year ago?
Well, I don't think so. I think Vince is really happy where the company's at. Certainly that's what he's conveyed to me. Keep in mind.
So his lesson is, I'm going to stay out of this and just concentrate on the sale.
Yeah, what he said to me and what I've certainly experienced is, hey, I'm 77 now. I want to explore all strategic alternatives. Is there a sale out there? Is there a merger out there? What would make sense most for the company? Which is why when that Saudi thing we referenced earlier, and we have a great relationship.
No, we didn't reference that yet.
We didn't talk Saudi. I thought you mentioned
We talked
it
right
quickly.
before the pod, yeah. There's a fake story last week.
Fake. 100% fake, 100% made up, saying that there was an imminent transaction or whatever it was. Totally false.
That you were going to sell basically privately to some Saudi money group, and that was going to be how this ended. It seemed, and then I checked the person who had and they had like 5,500 followers. Yeah, but then the way the world works this time in 2023, people just ran with it for the next 18 hours.
It was absurd. It was nuts. And by the way, that person subsequently took down that tweet.
Right.
Because again, when I'm saying 100% false, it was 100% false. So in this process, he's there to oversee it. It's his controlling share. I'm involved in it. Triple H is involved in it. The board's obviously involved in it. Triple H being on the board, as I have the good fortune of being as well. And we're going to see how it plays out. It should not be a lengthy process.
Well, the funny thing about that story is you're public.
All right, so they decided to shit on Muehlhausen. Right decision. Muehlhausen sucks. He should never have put out that stupid tweet at like 12 o'clock at night or something like that. And even to today, we still see WWE is going to get bought by the Saudis. And none of this stuff makes any sense. It was entertaining, but it was also quite frustrating because you don't go through the trouble of hiring JP Morgan just to sell it to some goddamn Saudis. You could have did that 2 months ago if you wanted to. I found that to be humorous. That was pretty humorous. But I think he did a good job of sort of refuting that and kind of putting his boot on Muehlhausen's head. And bodyslam.net, because they ran with it as well. And so many other groups who didn't vet the information, or it took them a while. Again, I joke and say it took them 4 hours, but it probably took them an hour or two to look into it and see whether it was true or not. Because so many people were just kind of so into the, oh my God, OMG, I'm hearing such crazy things. I'm hearing crazy things. It's like, ugh.
We're a publicly traded company. And I mean, I sold my company when it was privately traded, but even then, there are so many rules in place when you're whether if a public traded company is involved either selling or buying, there's so many rules in place that it would never come out that way like it did last week with this thing that just pops out. And plus the sale process, if you're going to do this correctly, which I would assume you are, it's months and months, and you're going to want multiple bidders, and you're going to play people against each other, and it would just be like, oh, somebody made us an offer, we're done.
It's a thing about the rules that you just mentioned, privately held, publicly traded, whatever it is. Again, the founder CEOs are inherently not rule followers.
Yeah.
So they should follow the law because nobody wants a problem with that. But in terms of the rules, I didn't see you, this is a compliment, I didn't see you following that many rules at your prior employer. You sort of did it the way that you thought it needed to be done, and ultimately your work stood out. Sort of follow those rules, I would have to imagine, was difficult for a period of time to get your head wrapped around them. Not as difficult for us because the company's been publicly traded for so long, and you understand that the rules are really the SEC rules, and nobody wants to violate any of those.
Yeah.
So the imminent announcement that it's been sold already or privatized, whatever it was, of course, if you're looking at it, connecting the dots, it made absolutely no sense. In terms of what the actual process will be, we're just starting it now. By the way, considering all that money you made on your transaction, maybe you come in, bid it. I end up working for you.
Here's the thing. Nick Khan is very charming. He's very charming. He's charming the shit out of Bill Simmons. He knows Bill Simmons' history. He's cracking jokes, personal jokes about him. He knows how to discuss things in a way to get Bill Simmons to understand. At the same time, but if you're not, that familiar with Bill Simmons, you're kind of like, okay, there's some inside baseball here in terms of, oh yeah, Bill, you didn't play by the rules. You were an outlaw, Bill. Nobody ever wants to be, status quo. So you were an outlaw, Bill. You did your own thing. You were a gunslinger, Bill. Vince is a gunslinger like you, Bill. He's just gone out there slinging his gun. Into secretaries and stuff. I'm sorry. In the Wild Wild West or whatever. Ben Get It In says the Saudi story may have been how the mole was found. You know what? I think that they probably had quite a few ways of finding that damn mole. I'm pretty sure they were doing some good digging. I think that's the reason why Vince stepped down. I'll say it again. I think Vince stepped down because he wanted to find out who the rat was on the board. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking he wanted to figure out who that rat was and get that person off the board. And maybe he found more than one. Maybe it was, board members working together or whatever the case may be. Maybe it was an attempt. Here's the thing, though. I found this to be interesting, and this is something that people don't seem to get. Whenever you are dealing with more than one person, you're dealing with more than one agenda, right? Everybody has a different agenda. And and every team is exactly the same way. The key idea, this is what capitalism is all about, right? Capitalism is about respecting that not everybody's going to be on the same page for the exact same reasons. Capitalism is all about you have an incentive to do X, Y, and Z. I have an incentive to do D, E, F. How can we work together so that we can both get what we want or get most of what we want? It's cooperative. Competition at the same time is sort of cooperative because you have to agree to certain rules and stuff like that. So there's some degree of cooperation. When you are in a situation where other people have their own agenda, if their agenda is against you or against your company, well, that's different, right? And we've seen sometimes where people want WWE to be in this position. There have been a lot of people for a long time now that have wanted WWE to look into selling, sell the company. It's been going on for 2 or 3 years. Sell the company. WWE is supposed to sell. We want WWE to sell. I'm hearing that they want to sell. Who knows? It might have been somebody overheard that stuff and they've been leaking it. That they, WWE's looking to sell or whatever the case may be, or we want to sell. Even, because, Nick Khan spent most of 2020 and 2021 dispelling sell rumors, right? I haven't heard anything about a sale where our phones are open, but I'm not fielding any calls about selling. That's one way of trying to figure out who it is, So Ben Get It In is correct. If you can tell people different stories. You can give people different information. I would give them untrue information, sort of to embarrass them and then out them later as being somebody who was, working against the company. But that's something that I said before, like in embarrassing Vince, you damage the company. And if you were a board member who essentially outed the CEO, chairman, and founder of the company, you put the financial risk you took a financial risk. The WWE sheets, when you do the quarterlies, when they do their quarterly earnings and they put out these earnings reports, inevitably in the earnings report somewhere under risks would be the death or incapacitation of Vince McMahon. If Vince was to somehow die or to be incapacitated, that is a risk to the company. So that means that pretty much everybody on the board admitted it and knew it. If Vince were to die or be somehow incapacitated, that was a risk factor for the company. So that means somebody on the board, when they went and snitched to the Wall Street Journal, were openly attacking the company by trying to take down Vince, because you don't know what the outcome will be. Now, we can look at it, post hoc and say, well, it'll be fine. Stephanie and Nick Khan will take over, Triple H will take over, everything will be good. We know that because we lived through it. That's what happened. But before it happens, nobody has any idea what's going to happen to WWE without Vince. The company doesn't know. None of the talent know. Nobody knows. So when you do something that is done with the intention of taking Vince out, you are looking to attack the company. And if you're looking to attack the company, you definitely got a different agenda than other people in the company. And everybody's got their own agenda. Like I said before, everybody's going to have their own reasons for doing things that they do, for saying things that they say, for going along with things that they go along with. Like they had a unanimous decision for Vince not to return, and a unanimous decision to welcome him back, and a unanimous decision to put him on as executive chairman of the board. All of this was done unanimously. So you see the contradictions in these things. So clearly there's people who are doing things that they don't agree with, but they see some value in going forward. That should tell you that there's different agendas here. So it's a power game. Who has the momentum? Who has the power? When Vince wasn't in the company, they tried to use their power to keep him out. But now that he's back in, he kind of forced his way back in. Everybody's kind of like, well, he's in here now, so go ahead and be the chairman, whatever. I don't care. Like I get it. But everybody should realize that people have their own agendas. Not everybody cares about the same thing. And I say this all the time when we talking about Vince and selling the company. Vince McMahon, I don't think, will ever work for somebody else. Do you see Vince McMahon working for like a David Zaslav? A guy who's going to, butcher WWE, fire all of his friends, his top executives, the people that he put in position, cut the budget for Monday Night Raw so they can't have fireworks anymore, no LED boards up anymore, because, it's a line item now. You're spending how much on fireworks, Vince? You can't do that. You're spending how much on talent? You got to shave that off. You're spending how much on making your own merchandise, or you're making your own studios. We're going to cut that budget. You think he wants to go through that? You would think Vince at 77 years old wants to have to put together a packet and take it to some guy in Comcast and say, here's what we need, boss. This is what our budget should be for this quarter, boss. He's 77. You think he wants to do that shit? No way. So clearly, Vince has a different agenda when it comes to these strategic alternatives. And I think if he does sell it, I don't think it'll be a situation where he wants to run it. I don't think Vince wants to answer to somebody else. The only boss he has had for the last 50 years was his father. That man's been dead since 1984. Think about that for a minute. Vince McMahon has not worked as an employee for another person since 1982. Why would he start doing it now? Why would he all of a sudden be okay being somebody's fucking employee right now? A billionaire at 78 years old. He'll be 78 in August. I don't see it. I don't see it. That's the thing that sticks in my craw about why I don't believe this sale shit is actually going to happen. All right? Sure, He might get a board seat on Comcast or whatever. He might get, a significant amount of money. He might get a job, whatever. I don't see Vince McMahon going along with being an employee. I just don't see it. Nick Khan, sure. I can see WWE maybe selling the Comcast event saying, see you around, pal. I'm going to take my billions and go on about my business. And then, Nick Khan, I leave it to you. You fix this. You figure it out. You work with Comcast and, and when they come in and start cutting the budget and everything, you do that. You and Triple H handle it. Me and my family, we're going to go spend our billions. I can see that, but I don't see Vince McMahon at all. Like, people need to put that into perspective. I seen The Rock, right? The Rock popped up on CNBC, and he was talking about Vince and WWE. And let's play that audio, because I want to play that audio because I forgot about it, to be quite honest. But he agreed with the host that whoever buys it is going to have to let Vince run it. But even when it comes to that, I'm kind of skeptical.
It's been in the news.
I'm kind of skeptical. So here's The Rock on CNBC. Then we're going to jump back to Nick Khan.
Something that's been in the news in recent days, that's the WWE. You made your name initially as one of the most successful pro wrestlers of all time. You're part of the WWE franchise during the boom years, the so-called attitude era of the late 90s and early 2000s. You know the McMahon family. You came up with Triple H. What do you see as the next chapter for WWE? I mean, would a sale or a future involving new owners actually make sense here?
Well, I can tell you this. I can tell you that it's an exciting brand. It's a brand that I've been very fortunate enough to have tremendous success over the decades. And also for your viewers here in the business world who may not know, the lineage goes way back, multi-generational, with the WWE. My grandfather wrestled for Vince McMahon Sr. in the 70s. My dad wrestled for Vince McMahon in the 80s. And then I came along with my bad haircut and fanny pack, and I continued to wrestle for Vince too as well. So we've seen tremendous success over the years. I think it's a very attractive company, and I'm excited, and I wish Vince and that company all the best.
Yeah, Dwayne, it's David Faber. There are those, and you seem to make this point, that say Vince McMahon will never be able to separate himself from the WWE. So the idea of a sale becomes sort of difficult to imagine unless somehow it's a buyer who lets him continue to run it and be in charge. Would you tend to agree with that?
I would, and that's a great note, David. I think with the world of professional wrestling and the world of WWE, it's so unique. The fan base is very large and very passionate, and there's nothing like the WWE. So I think with the new owners, if there are new owners and acquirers who are going to come in, I think that they have to share that same passion that Vince has for the company and for the world of pro wrestling, which isn't always easy to do. As you guys know, with a company like this, it's been so incredibly successful over the years. A sale and acquisition can be very complicated, but there's that unique added anchor to this, I believe, that Vince feels, where you got to find the right buyer who still has that passion and the love for this very unique world.
All right, so the question AJ3 asks is, how old is the interviewer when the Attitude Era was around? I don't know, but she seems to be in her late 20s, maybe early 30s. She seems to be. So maybe she was a kid. She's certainly younger than The Rock. That's for sure. She's a young white woman. She probably never watched wrestling before in her life. Her brothers are probably watched it or something like that. But The Rock thinks that, the buyer is going to let Vince run it. Look, you would have to be naive to think that you can sell a company to somebody and all of a sudden they're going to keep their word. It's like, I've seen it happen too many times with these mergers and acquisitions and whatever. They make a deal on paper to buy something or whatever the case may be. And then they immediately, whoever purchased it, start hacking pieces off of it. First, you don't need two different vice presidents. So we're going to get rid of all of your vice presidents. We're going to get rid of all of, your studio people, because we probably got our own. We're going to get rid of all of your camera guys. We probably got our own. For starters, when two companies who are similar, and I believe if WWE is going to get bought, it's going to get bought by somebody who already has a studio. Maybe it's a television company, probably Comcast. Let's put it like that. They're going to have a lot of overlap in terms. You don't need two CEOs, for instance. So somebody's got to go. And you're not going to get rid of the CEO of the company that bought the other one. The guy who got bought is the one who's out, right? So that guy's out. All of the vice presidents and presidents, all those guys are out. I have a hard time with Vince being the only one left. Of everybody that you can get rid of from WWE, Vince is going to be the only one left, and he's going to be submitting a budget to some guy who's 99% of the time the guy's probably going to be younger than he is. He's submitted some budget to some guy in NBC saying this is the money we need to run Raw every week. And then the guy sending Vince a sheet of paper that says, cut the fireworks, cut the music budget, run smaller buildings, yada, yada, yada. I just don't see that occurring. So to me, it seems like Vince is going to trade up for a board seat, and maybe he becomes on the board. Maybe him and his daughter get on the board of NBC as they, merge and get acquired by NBC or something like that, or Endeavor, which would put WWE governance. I think somebody from UFC sits on Endeavor's board. I'm not sure. I would have to look. Matter of fact, let's do that now. Let's go through some more of this Nick Khan interview, and while you do that, I'll look and see if who's on UFC sits on Endeavor's board.
It's a good idea. Just throw a couple billion or whatever it is, and you'll be fine.
I'll check my checking account.
Yeah, just write a check, Bank of America check, or whatever it is.
You still didn't properly explain to me why Stephanie left. I still don't get this part. The second time.
I think she came back because her dad asked her to come back.
But she's good at this, though.
She's great at it. By the way, the meetings that she went on, that I participated in a lot, as you can imagine, when there's stories like that come out, you want to make sure that people see you and they know who to talk to, and they know they can call you, and that, hey, there's a face with the product, and that there's somebody there to answer if there's a question.
Yeah.
So that was more about that. And at this moment in time, I think she felt her work was done for now. Nothing is permanent. Again, terrific executive, even better person. Life is long. Let's see.
So now he has neither child involved in WWE, because Shane left last year. There are rumors he got fired. I don't know can you even comment on what happened with Shane?
I don't have the particulars on that, but that's intentional.
Yeah.
Meaning, again, I'm not going to ask, even if it's a work thing, I'm not going to ask Vince, tell me what happened with your son. I have too much respect for that. It's also would be career suicide. I've never seen that work.
Yeah.
So, I'm not there to counsel them. They're not asking me to counsel them. As you know, family's complicated. Business is complicated. Family and business is even more complicated. I just assume stay away from it. But his son-in-law works there, and he's the head of creative.
Yeah.
And, there's always been a lot of Twitter chatter that somehow those two weren't getting along or this or that. I think everybody's getting along just great.
Are you worried about more revelations coming out about Vince that will be unflattering?
I'm not. It feels like whatever happened, and it's out there, and people know. I've always found him to be a very honest broker with this stuff. So even when the process started last summer, there was nothing that he hid. There was nothing that he covered up. I think he was very honest about it, and I appreciated that, and I think a lot of other folks did too.
All right. So I looked, and I don't see anybody from UFC or Zuffa on Endeavor's board. So I don't think UFC has any sort of representation when it comes to being purchased by Endeavor. Well, too bad. Whatever. Interesting bits here from Nick Khan. I'm about to call him Tony Khan. I'm about to offend the man. I don't mean to offend you. All right, so he says that Vince has always been sort of open about these unflattering things. And he's found him to be honest on them. we can discard that because Nick Khan has to say this sort of stuff. He works with Vince, right? He's not going to be like, look, I think he's a piece of shit personally. He's like, the fucking guy works with Vince. And now that Vince is the executive chairman, Nick Khan once again works for Vince. You know, Vince is the boss. He can fire Nick Khan if he wants to, and he can do so without cause. You know, CEOs don't have unions. There's no union for a CEO. You know, you could turn around and fire the guy because you just want somebody else in the chair if you want to. So, any personal feelings, how he feels about, you know, Vince, I toss that in the gutter. Who cares about that? Now, when he said that Vince was cooperative about, you know, with the investigation, and I do believe that, because that was the story that was coming out during the entire situation, that Vince was in no way getting in the way. He was providing information if he was asked for it. When information needed to be disclosed, he was willing to disclose it. He was willing to pay back the money as promised. So in some ways, he has been cooperative. And everybody knows that these kind of things occur. And I think so many people were upset that Nick Khan was not as morally indignant over this whole thing as they were. There's a lot of false moral indignity about the whole Vince McMahon accusations thing. Everybody wants to get on a soapbox and talk about how it's the most horrible thing ever. Of course, they provide no evidence that the things actually occurred outside of paperwork and secondhand stories. And that's the thing that really kind of blew my mind, is that there's no firsthand information about any of this stuff, right? There's no names, no dates, nothing. We don't know what the fuck was going on. We don't know why it was going on. All of this information is secondhand and third hand, right? Anybody can sit down and say, here's a document. Let me tell you a story about this document. You know, it's like, I don't know whether that's true or not. You know? Now, when he was asked, did he think that any more were going to come out about Vince, because it was a threat that there was more. And Nick Khan says, no, like, whatever it is, it's over. Well, a day or so later, it comes out that Vince McMahon has paid off Rita Chatterton. All right, so the story goes that in 1986, Vince McMahon supposedly raped Rita Chatterton, the first female referee of WWE. He supposedly raped her in a limousine. I have the information right here. It's from the Wall Street Journal. We're going to play the audio of this. Apparently, this was settled for a lot less than what she wanted. But again, I didn't have time to really vet too much of this, so we're just going to play the audio. And
WWE's Vince McMahon settles with ex-wrestling referee who accused him of rape. Multi-million-dollar settlement averts a public legal fight as executive chairman pursues possible WWE sale. By Joe Palazzolo and Ted Mann. January 19, 2023, 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Vince McMahon, the executive chairman of World Wrestling Entertainment Incorporated, has agreed to a multi-million-dollar legal settlement with a former wrestling referee who accused him of raping her in 1986, according to people familiar with the agreement. Mr. McMahon's settlement with Rita Chatterton, completed last month, averts a public legal fight over her allegations as Mr. McMahon pursues a possible sale of the company. Ms. Chatterton, the first female referee of what was then known as the World Wrestling Federation, demanded $11.75 million in damages for the alleged rape in a November letter to Mr. McMahon's attorney viewed by the Wall Street Journal. Ms. Chatterton agreed to a lesser amount in the millions of dollars, one of the people familiar with the matter said, but the Journal couldn't determine the exact figure. Mr. McMahon denies and always has denied raping Ms. Chatterton. And he settled the case solely to avoid the cost of litigation, said Jerry McDevitt, a lawyer for Mr. McMahon. To hear the full story, subscribe or sign in.
all right, so there it is. Once again, this Vince finds himself in a very weird situation because, much like Michael Jackson, I'm putting Vince in very bad company tonight. much like Michael Jackson, once you pay people off, folks naturally start to think that it is an admission of guilt. When in reality, what you're doing is you're buying your time and you're saving yourself more money later. Lawsuits with Vince's attorneys get very, very, very expensive. And they get expensive fast. Because you get billed hourly. And they're going to take their time doing research. And they're going to take their time because they're milking you for money at that point. All right. So it's always in your best interest to get this thing done as quickly as possible. Because you have other things to do. Now, it should go without saying that Vince McMahon threatened to sue Rita Chatterton back in 1994, I believe it was, or 93. When she went on Geraldo Rivera and made these accusations publicly, he threatened to sue her, but he was going through the steroid trial at the time, something that was, he was battling the federal government, and he was already basically broke. That whole thing was very difficult times. The business really suffered because Vince didn't have any fucking money. So he dropped the case. And for a long time, the only people who really believed that Rita Chatterton were raped were wrestling journalists who read the story. There were no witnesses. There was no evidence. Nobody. She claimed that it was in Poughkeepsie, New York in 1986, but she didn't say anything for 6 years because, she wanted for her good friend Andre the Giant to die. It's ridiculous. The entire story is that Rita Chatterton was this single mother who wasn't looking to get into the wrestling business until she was offered an obscene amount of money by Vince McMahon, and she was gonna be in commercial. I think she said she was gonna do advertisements. She was gonna do commercials and be in magazines, and he supposedly promised her the world and $500,000, which probably would have been Hulk Hogan money. It was absolutely ridiculous, the story that she told. And you see why she didn't want to go to court and say it. It's absurd. So what it really is just a way of wasting Vince's money. It's publicly embarrassing him and wasting his money. So he said, fuck it. You want money? Here, take your money, go about your business. So now consistently over the course of 30 years, the David Bixen spans and all these various people who keep sending her emails trying to talk to her about it. Now she can say, no comment. I got my money. She's in her 60s or something like that now. It's going to be over with. She's probably going to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement or some kind of other type of settlement. And that's it. Done and done. We don't talk about Rita Chatterton no more. Now, there is still another woman out there from California. We don't know who that is. We don't know what's going on with her. We don't know if that's been settled or not. We don't know. I'm guessing both of them probably have been. And the Rita Chatterton case, despite the fact that it was so long ago, it popped up due to New York's look back law. But basically, your case could be over the threshold of statute of limitations. But as long as it's a sexual assault or something like that, you could go back and file a lawsuit or something like that. It's like, why would Vince want to go back and try to relive 1986? Where were you on this date in 1986? What were you doing? Like, just think about the line of questioning if they were to go to trial. You're 77 years old. And now you're going to have to remember something from 36 years ago. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you talking to? Do you remember being in the limousine with Rita Chatterton? If so, what did you talk about? Was there anyone else in the car? What color was the limousine? All the little trick questions that guys are going to ask you. Oh, you said the limousine was black, but what if it was blue? What color was your shoes? What color was your suit? What was she wearing? Did she cry? Did you make her a promise to do X, Y, and Z? It's all just nonsense. And then, of course, dragging in all of these other wrestlers who Some of them are dead. Some of them are alive, but again, they're old. A lot of the boys are in their 60s too. It's like, come on. None of this shit made any goddamn sense. Of course, he's just going to throw her some money to make her go away. Of course. Why wouldn't he? With his attorneys, and as ridiculous this case is, it wasn't going to do nothing but end this way. And I see that this is becoming a regular occurrence. Like, it happened to Jimmy Snuka, where he wait till the guy's in his 70s. Now you're going to try to make him relive some shit from 40 years ago. They're doing it with Ron Jeremy now, too. You know, he's a little shaky. I don't know. But they decided that he has neurocognitive disorder. He's 70, accused of multiple rapes and sexual assaults. And you're trying to tell this old man that he now has to remember his every interaction with this particular person. That shit could have been 20 some odd years ago. I can't remember motherfuckers I met last week. And you're trying to tell me I have to remember somebody from 25 years ago? I forget people, like, especially in the COVID world, where you see everybody wearing a mask all the time. Sometimes you see somebody without a mask on, you're like, do I know you? Like, who the fuck are you? You know, it's impossible. Imagine somebody cornering you and saying, where were you on this particular night, on this particular day? It's like, I don't fucking know. Unless it was a big event. Like, somebody asked me, I think today, where were you on 9/11? All right, something like that, I could probably remember where I was on 9/11. But if no rape occurred, no sexual assault occurred or anything like that, I don't fucking know where I was. I don't know what I was doing. And then that makes you sound guilty. You know? Or unless you say something that's incongruent, something that they can prove is false. You know, maybe I wasn't even in the building. Well, here's a picture of you in catering, eating green beans. Yeah, you were there. Like, oh, well, shit, I guess I was there then. Shit, I don't remember. It was fucking 30 years ago. Let's go back to the Bill Simmons thing. Nick Khan seems pretty damn comfortable saying that Vince is not going to have any more skeletons in the closet. I think there's at least one more. I think there's at least one more. And I still think he got a love child out there somewhere. I swear to God. I swear to God. That's the cherry on top. That is the cherry on top. Is that Vince McMahon probably has a love child out there somewhere. And I would not be surprised that after he dies, much like, you know, Michael Jackson and so many other people popped up to have quote unquote secret children, even though a lot of that stuff, and there's no way to prove it because they'll never take a DNA test. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, turn around one day and there's going to be a guy, once Vince is dead and you've proven that he's dead by digging up his body 2 or 3 times to make sure he's still in there. Some guy going to pop up and be like, oh yeah, Vince McMahon's my dad. He was banging my mom, who was his chimney sweep or something like that.
Do you think that he was candid enough to the general public about it?
I don't know that he really commented to the general public about it.
He didn't really.
Yeah. So it was, you know, you remember his Armin Katayan interview. You remember his Bob Costas interview. The press thing is not what he enjoys doing. So I don't think he was going to have a sit down with anybody and talk through it. It's just not in his mind of things that he wants to do with his time or for his business / our business. So the public mea culpa or whatever it was, I think in the retirement, that summed it up. Hey, I'm going to step away and thank you so much. And to me, again, on the inside, it was clearly not a work because there was nothing said about it on TV after the initial Stephanie goodbye. I think that was in Philly on SmackDown, or thank you, Dad, whatever that was. And then Roman Reigns built it into the storyline with Austin Theory on the subsequent Raw.
Yeah.
He said, hey, your daddy's not around anymore, something to that effect, which our merchandise team made into T-shirts, and they sold quite well. But that's all we did, which should have showed the smart fan that it wasn't a work.
You understand why there was 10% of me that still feels like this whole thing was a work, right? Especially like the timing of January before
Nick Khan, beast. beast. The marketing department was right on top of it in order to monetize the "Your Daddy's Not Around" shirt. But he's not wrong. You know, Vince has a temperament, and I think that became, once he got some good PR training, got some good experience, he didn't feel the need to go out there and fight on behalf of the product or the talent or the boys or himself anymore. He kind of smartened up. I think the Benoit thing was kind of the last time. Can anybody remember Vince, getting in the muck after the Benoit stuff? Because he got pretty much destroyed on the Benoit situation too. And he never really looks very good when he goes public because he's very brash and he's very direct. Like when he went on, what was that? Was it Donahue? Yeah, I think it was Donahue, and he was on there with Meltzer and one of the Ring Boy guys who ended up being ended up being a con man, that guy. And Vince was destroying the guy, because the guy was saying that Pat Patterson raped him. I think that was the Pat Patterson accuser. And Meltzer was there, I think Bruno was there, and there was some other people, and Vince didn't come across very well. Said that he fired the guy because he wasn't good at his job and all that kind of stuff. And that was in public, and over the years, Vince has continuously tried to do this. He tried to argue his case in public where people could hear him, and it didn't work out. It never works out because his temper gets the best of him. He ends up looking like a goddamn maniac out there. He's the roid rage. He just can't contain it. Like when he tried to kill Bob Costas, that fucking rules. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of cringe, but it also kind of rules because I'm like, yeah, wring his fucking neck. I'm just all the way down for like a moment for like Dr. D. David Schultz when he smacked John Stossel, or when Vader went and hemmed up that reporter in, I think it was Kuwait. That shit was great. Like sometimes guys get a little reckless with their mouth and you want to, put hands on them. But Vince is not good at that. Now he's the Godfather. He can't go around getting his hands too dirty. That's what you got guys like Nick Khan for. Nick Khan is out here to, to talk to Bill Simmons or whatever. Vince don't got time to do this shit. And he doesn't want to because everybody's going to nitpick everything he says anyway. Like when he did the Austin podcast and he made those comments about Cesaro. People nitpicked the shit out of those comments. He ended up being right, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on.
Rumble, this is like your playoffs right now from mid-January all the way through WrestleMania, which is in LA this year, which has a chance to be the biggest WrestleMania ever. All of this makes me, person who's had wrestling in my life since, 1978, very suspicious.
Well, by the way, can we talk on a personal note for a moment?
Yeah.
2015, I believe, was the Dallas WrestleMania. 2015 or 16?
2015 was Dallas.
Dallas. So San Francisco was 15 or 16. Dallas was after San Francisco. You and I were both there.
It would be nice to have numbers.
My son is now 15, but yeah, he was like 8 probably.
8. So
7 or 8.
My son is 7 now.
Yeah.
So I remember you and I were texting. I think we're staying in the same hotel. You're like, check this video out.
My son doing all the wrestling moves. Yeah.
Correct. Right. With the pillow, suplexes, and now I see my own son doing it. And I'm like, holy shit. This is just like a little boy thing at that moment in time. I don't know. It's something that I always remember it. And now when I see my kid doing it, it reminds me of that. But you'll be at WrestleMania, I assume.
You didn't answer my question about whether
Thank you.
10% feeling that this was a work.
Well, so you're going to be at WrestleMania. The 10% is going to be resolved. it's not a work. So if there's any anticipation that there's any swerve there, there's no swerve.
Are there plans for Vince to be on camera and involved in any plots?
Not at this moment.
Not at this moment.
No is the answer.
That's like
to
a
that.
non-denial denial.
No is the answer to that question. Could it change in a few months? Sure, it could change, but that would be Paul and Vince, being on the same page about it. I don't see it right now.
What?
I think Vince being on TV is the last thing he needs to do. You know, the last thing he needs to do is to be on TV, which probably means get ready to have Vince on TV. Look, Dallas was 2016. AJ Styles' first Mania. San Francisco was 2015. You must be young. See, back in my day, WrestleMania had fucking numbers. Okay? We say WrestleMania 9. We say WrestleMania 10. I don't care where it was. I know WrestleMania 9 was in Las Vegas. It doesn't matter. We call it WrestleMania 11, which I think was in the Meadowlands. We call it WrestleMania 12. WrestleMania Dallas. I don't know what the fuck that is. Okay, I don't know. I don't even know what year that is. That's 32. I want to say Dallas. Dallas is 32, right? WrestleMania 32. Just go back to numbers, please. Roman numerals, please. God damn it. This shit driving me nuts. So that means San Francisco was WrestleMania 31. Yeah, 31 because they had the Rollins cash in.
What's the sale process without telling me too much? Or because I know you have some restrictions, but
Sure.
You have a bunch of suitors. You have a price in your head. Vince obviously wants to sell. I actually, sidebar question. Why does Vince want to sell? Is it an age thing? Is it like, what am I going to do? But the end, I'm looking at the finish line a little bit here. Why not? Maybe this will be my final victory lap. Why sell now out of all times?
I think he's ready. I can't describe it as anything more than that after the last 5 months. And keep in mind, again, you engaged in empire building. You're still engaged in empire building. At a certain point, it's like, okay, how much more of this empire am I going to build? We continue to build it. He continued to build it until he stepped down 5 months or so ago. But I think in looking at a world of consolidation, the sort of, standalone enterprise that owns 99% of its intellectual property.
Yeah.
With the media rights.
And a library and media rights.
Library, right? With the media rights coming up in October of 24, which means the process starts in a few months on that. Certainly to go lock in a bunch of long-term deals and then to sell or try to sell to everybody doesn't make sense. The timing was now. So even if you look at our annual shareholders.
So you're saying you want to sell the company and then you do the deals. The new person that comes in, that would be their first order of the business would be to bang out the new 2024 media right deals.
That's the goal, unless one of the media conglomerates ends up buying it directly. Right, then they certainly wouldn't want it encumbered by long-term media rights deals elsewhere.
So for people listening, you have the streamers, all the usual suspects. You have a place like Endeavor.
Okay, so Nick kind of laid it out pretty clearly that media consolidation is a real thing. The number of suitors for their product is diminishing. That maybe now is the right time to sell because you're not going to have a lot of buyers maybe in the next go round because companies are being swallowed up, and I think maybe the Warner Brothers Discovery thing probably spooked them a little bit because that was a big entity that got swallowed up there, and I feel like this is something that we discussed on this channel before when it comes to why he would sell now. It's before the media rights deals are up, and you could do that yourself. If you're running the company, you could do that yourself. It just makes me physically ill to think that somebody else is going to own WWE. That sucks. Ugh. That's garbage. But it's impeccable reasoning. Of course. Why wait until, there's only two suitors, Amazon and Disney? And then you have to bounce back and forth between Amazon and Disney, or, worry about somebody else, starting their own wrestling company. I don't know. It's something to consider, but I still don't think Vince McMahon will work for somebody else. I just don't see it happening.
Or which has already bought UFC and figured out how to mine that IP in all this different ways. what are there any other lanes for suitors other than streamer or somebody like Endeavor? Is there somebody I'm missing? Could somebody with deep pockets just come in and be like, I want to buy this? Like, how the guy bought the Phoenix Suns.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and by the way, we texted about when Real Sports had the piece on the new owner of the Phoenix Suns a month or so before that transaction took place. All of a sudden, he's getting press. It's positive press. Obviously, he built his career really nicely. You sort of saw that he wanted.
Yeah, I heard about him in September. I think that was when I'd start talking about him on my pod. It started like the buzz starts kind of going out.
Totally. I think you hit me on that early too.
I had that one first.
You had that first.
I had some
right.
good. I had some good info on that one.
You had that first. You called it right. Everyone who wasn't on the inside thought it might go in a different direction. To Bob Iger, you never did. I never.
Well, because I knew the story. Big shot Bob Sarver wasn't selling to Bob Iger. Wasn't happening.
Understood. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. The other, avenue, again, on an unencumbered process, it's everyone you just mentioned, plus private equity. So there's a lot of money out there. There probably aren't a lot of transactions in 2023.
Yeah.
So I think this one is going to get, in a positive way, a heightened look by everybody to say, hey, what could we build this to? And if there's folks out there who regret not being able to buy the Suns or not buying the UFC 6, 7, 8 years ago, this is an opportunity that doesn't come around that often.
Yeah, and we didn't mention the piece where Vince could sell a chunk of the company, not the whole company, right? Is that in play too, or is it just all or nothing?
No, that's in play. So again, when he's using the term strategic alternatives, that's not to be cute. It's basically we're looking at everything. So if he said, I'm looking to sell the company, well, what does that mean? A piece of it, all of it? Do you merge the company? Do you buy another company instead of selling the company? Do you sell the company outright? A lot of it will come down to price, but I don't think all of it. It's what's the best value for the shareholder, and certainly what's the best value for Vince after the shareholder. So the stock after the announcement is flying high. As you may have seen, it's around $90, a share now. How much more is someone going to offer on that makes it a transaction that he wants to do?
I gotta tell you, that WWE stock, man, that motherfucker's a beaut. I bought 2 shares of WWE stock loaded onto my Fidelity accounts on January the 2nd. Vince was back on the 5th, and that shit has been going up ever since. Let me tell you, it is the one stock in my portfolio that's actually doing very well. All my other stocks are in the shitter, but that WWE stock, that shit is fantastic. That shit's great. That shit rules. That shit is, I think it should over $90 now or something like that. Man, Vince coming back has been a financial windfall. I'm not selling it yet because I have to pay capital gains tax if I sell. So I'm not going to sell it yet. Because I remember I bought Sprint stock maybe, I want to say about a month before they got bought by T-Mobile. And I didn't get a lot of money out of that whole thing. And plus my shares when they got purchased, it got absorbed by Robinhood. This is why I dropped Robinhood. Robinhood fucking sucks. I had some kind of debt on my Robinhood account. I don't know what kind of debt it was, but they took all of it. When my Sprint shares got purchased, it got snatched by Robinhood, and I just pulled all my money out of Robinhood at that point. So I'm definitely looking and saying to myself, if WWE gets purchased, I am. It's not a lot, but I'm looking at a decent come up. It's more than what I put in, so that ought to be nice. But yeah, the share price is doing very well. I'm very impressed. Thank you very much, Vince McMahon, for coming back and ruining everybody's life. It's been great for business. just been fantastic for business.
And it looks like we should mention the Rita Chatterton possible lawsuit, or it is a lawsuit, or Vince has to deal with that. Do you feel like suitors are going to wait to see how that plays out and how bad that's going to be? And is there going to be more details like that coming out, or are they just plowing ahead?
I think everyone's just plowing ahead. You just move forward, right? Because in all of these businesses, there's never a clean, clear path.
Yeah.
There's always some encumbrance, something in the way, some hurdle in the way that you have to get around or get through. So I see that like I would any other item like it.
What's that?
All right, so we already talked about Rita Chatterton on here. Bill Simmons very adeptly dropped that in this joint by saying, oh yeah, the Rita Chatterton thing is going to be coming up soon. And a lot of the wrestling journals were not happy with the way I'll call him Tony Khan again, the way Nick Khan handled this situation by calling it an encumbrance. Again, they expected him to have, I don't know what they expected him to have. I'm so legit sitting here saying to myself, what did they expect for him to say? You know, what did you expect for him to say? He's answering the question. This is where he answered the question pretty straightforward and didn't go too far into it, right? He expounded upon everything, talking about, oh, Bill, how old was your son again? My son was yada, 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 during the other questions. On this one, it's kind of like, no, I don't expect it to really be in the way. It's just like any other item. It's one of those things that it comes and goes. It's a small encumbrance. I don't think that'll really bother anybody. And everybody got really offended because he called it a encumbrance. And it's like, oh, look, let's not nitpick what the guy said. He's basically just saying nobody cares. Now, truthfully, Nick Khan probably already knew that the Rita Chatterton thing was taken care of because the Rita Chatterton case apparently was settled last month, which means it was probably settled before Vince even came back. That's the crazy thing, right? Vince came back in January. If the settlement had occurred, it actually occurred in December of 2022. So it was done before he came back. So it definitely won't be in the way. I know that really kind of eats people alive. But since I don't really buy the whole Rita Chatterton rape thing anyway, I mean, she really blew her with me. She blew her load when she said that she was offered $500,000. I was like, I don't believe that. There's just no way I would believe that. No. For a single mother, no. Sorry, no.
What's that like to work with Vince day to day? Like who I've been in his vortex / vicinity a few times, and there's a force of nature personality to him that is obviously unique to him. But what is that like that's your life 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week?
So first of all, I know this is going to sound like a canned answer. He's much more polite than people think. I don't know if you found that to be the case.
He's way more soft-spoken.
Totally.
I think that's the disarming piece of him, because you think he's going to be the guy on the TV show or the pay-per-view.
I think he's a great listener. And by the way, I think you were the first one with the Andre doc, the first quote-unquote outsider to come in and have a real voice with the WWE intellectual property.
Yeah.
Does that sound right to you? I
think it is right.
Yeah, I don't remember ever seeing that before. And keep in mind, I was in my prior life as an agent, when that happened. And I feel the product that ultimately aired on HBO was a clear, actual collaboration where Vince listened, he was listened to. And if you look at that final product, I hadn't seen anything for all the great sports documentaries, HBO in its prime, you, John Skipper, Connor Shell, 30 for 30. My favorite, everyone's going to say Two Escobars, but Two Brothers.
Yep.
Was my favorite.
Once Brothers.
Once Brothers.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Clearly my favorite. I misspoke on the
No,
title.
you could. It's fine.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I'd never seen anything like that. And when I saw the Andre one, I thought it would be like, hey, here's the body slam when he got slammed at WrestleMania 3. That was just the backdrop of the whole thing to me. So let me ask you, how did you find him to be in that process?
Wait a minute. Do you hear the amount of glad handing that Nick Khan is doing? He is so smooth and charming. He is blowing all this smoke up Bill Simmons' ass. How much he loved his Andre documentary. After Bill Simmons asked him a tough question, by the way, now he's schmoozing again. He gave him sort of a curt answer on that one, where it's kind of like, oh, I see it as any kind of encumbrance. Didn't give him any dirt. On this one, he gives us this long, drawn-out answer about how much he loves Bill's documentaries and how he was the first one to have a real voice with the WWE on intellectual property. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh, God, just take him on a fucking date already. Ask him out already. God damn. You're clearly up to something. But he's kind of defending Vince here, that he's not the person that you see on TV. And I can almost tell you that most of the time, people are not the folks that you see on TV. That should go without saying, but it doesn't, because most people are expecting you to be like you are on TV. We got 25 minutes of this interview. I don't know how long this interview is, but we got another 25 minutes of this thing, I think. If this goes to the very end. Let's see.
The process is actually, for the Andre thing, I think that was pretty easy, because they trusted, they knew what that story was. They trusted we would do a good story. I think the interesting process for me was working on this Netflix series, which is less collaborative, but
Sure.
we still needed interviews with him, and sit down interviews, and just how he approached those interviews, and how he wanted to get everything right, I thought was really interesting to watch from afar. And then how tough of a critic he was on himself. Yeah, after the interviews, that was the part where I wasn't expecting, and I was kind of amused by.
Yeah, I thought the Andre thing, to me, the reason that I found that one really compelling is inside of WWE, that's the most revered superstar. if you
Right.
will.
That was like their favorite IP.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was their favorite. I think Vince feels that Andre helped Vince to build the company.
Yeah.
That attraction at that time. And it was something that hadn't been mined or touched in a way. So to get in there and develop the trust and get his feedback and make sure his notes were heard and all that, I think we saw, again, the end on-air product. In the Vince documentary, Vince has a saying, everybody needs to be produced. So, he's a perfectionist in the way that I see you as a perfectionist. Perhaps myself in certain genres, I need it to be perfect. I need it to be done the right way. So back to the initial question, in terms of working with him, very polite, always has a thoughtful point of view. In the smaller the room, the better it is to have differing points of view. I think that applies to everybody. So if I'm in a meeting with 20 people who work with me, and I
10
say,
aren't going to talk.
yeah,
Now
it
you're down to
doesn't work.
8. One person's going to try to put on a show.
Totally. You know the drill.
Yeah.
The most productive meetings are 2 people, 3 people, maybe 4 people, but 20 people in a room, you're not going to get the best version of anyone creative in my mind. So what I've always tried to do with him, smaller meetings, whether it was he, Steph, Kevin Dunn, Paul, myself, just me and him, whatever it was, it's most effective, and I think it's the best use of time.
So one recurring theme with Vince's career was that he kept having a challenger, or there kept being the...
All right, we're almost 2 hours, we're over 2 hours, what am I talking about, into this, and we're finally about to approach the AEW questions. Well, the AEW question that's going to lead to the absolute rolling of Tony Khan. I have heard these clips. But let's talk about the what Nick Khan just said. He just said he finds Vince to be more effective in smaller meetings. I think that should be said for most people. And I think he said that too, that, you get more, because you can listen and hear more, get the right people in the room, and you don't need, 40 people. It doesn't take that many people to come up with something. Get the right people in the room, the people who have the authority, the passion, and the ability. Then you can get most things done. So let's listen to Nick Khan roll AEW. This ought to be fun.
in these moments where it seemed like things might fall apart, and then they didn't. And in the last couple of years, you had AEW. They come in as probably the most polished challenger you guys have had in 20 years. You know, they had deep pockets, the TV station attached to them, and somebody in Tony Khan running their business who was a real wrestling fan, who really dipped into the history of wrestling in a bunch of different ways with some of the angles, and realized that he had to be a little bit of a different competitor to you versus like what some other people have done, which is either get older wrestlers and try to compete with you that way, or basically just do what WCW did, which was just, we're going to do the same thing as you. We're just going to try to spend more money to do it better. They kind of countered it a little bit. They grabbed some ECW pieces and some indie wrestling things and some All Japan, all this stuff. And it seemed like a real competitor. It seemed like they had, at least in the wrestling community of the nerds and the people who love the 5-star matches, all that stuff.
The nerds.
They kind of tapped into that. At what point did you feel like they were a threat?
Well, how do you think they're doing now?
Not as well.
I think a couple things. I've never met the guy.
Although I think they're having a better 2023 than 22. But anyway,
I think I've never met the kid. Tony Khan seems like a nice kid to me. I don't know him. I have met his dad.
The kid. I never met the kid. Tony Khan is 36. Tony Khan is 36. All right. Tony Khan, he looks like a little boy. Sometimes he acts like a little boy. Tony Khan is almost 40. All right. I know Nick Khan is older than Tony. No relation for people who might be listening and don't know these people. Tony Khan and Nick Khan are not related, right? So it's absolutely hilarious. This man is 36. He called this man a kid. I don't know the kid. I'm like, what? Wow. Wait, he's 40? I now I have to look up how old Anthony Khan is. God damn it. See, I gotta see how old Tony Khan is. Wait a minute. I know he's over the age of 30. That's for damn sure. Tony Khan. Oh shit, he is 40. Wow. He's older than me. I didn't know that. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Oh, brother. Oh, me, oh, my. Oh, brother. This man is 40. God damn. Oh, my goodness. And he just said, I don't know the kid. I thought Tony Khan was like 36 or something like that. I legit thought he was 36. I didn't know the man was 40. Tony Khan, I respect my elders. I'm so very sorry. I just didn't think a 40-year-old would have hair so bushy. I just don't think your hair should be that curly and bouncy at 40 years old. You know? I will give him credit though. If he's 40, he's got a lot of enthusiasm. Tony Khan, for being at 40, has a lot of enthusiasm, has a lot of energy. Give him credit. You know, yes, he's got some enthusiasm. God damn. Oh my God. The fucked up thing is everybody knows Tony Khan is spending his, he's spending his inheritance over here with this AEW thing, you know? God, why is Nick doing this? Why is he acting like this? He basically called him a little boy. All right, let's continue.
Dad, who randomly I sat next to at some like sports business luncheon that Stephanie and I went to a year and a half or so ago. I thought the dad was as impressive as could be. I think there was a piece on him in the New York Times a year or so prior to that. Self-made billionaire, I believe Pakistani immigrant. Could not be more impressed with him. I like the pivots. I'm not as big of an NFL fan as you are. I don't follow it the way you do. but I like the pivots he made. Make a mistake in hiring a certain coach a couple years ago, get out of that mistake, figure it out again. So could not be more impressed with the dad. He made his money in the auto parts business, I believe. So he knows that inside out. I don't believe he's involved on the wrestling side of the business. I'm talking about storylines outside of financing it.
No, he's got just the pockets.
Yeah, he has the pockets, and that's awesome. And I'm sure his kid appreciates it. But I was never threatened.
I'm sure his kid appreciates it. He called this man a kid again. This man is a grown man. Tony Khan probably has gray hair. He's got spider webs and dark circles around his eyes. His knees creak when he get out of bed. This man is 40. This man is middle-aged. And Nick Khan keeps calling him a kid. Tony Khan is a grown man. All right? This man is an adult. Why is he talking about this man like this? Will you please respect this man a little bit? Please. This man is long in the tooth. All right? God damn.
By that, but I tend not to be threatened. I don't feel threatened by anyone on anything. It's just not how I do business. So I don't mean like,
No, I get you.
Right. If some guy came up to me with a rattlesnake in my face, yeah, I guess I'd feel threatened by that. But I think similar to you, Bill, I've never seen you scared. I just don't think you see people that way. I don't think when you were on your rise as primarily a writer at that time, I think you probably put targets on certain people who
he's glad-handing
held an
again.
esteemed position who didn't deserve that position.
Yeah.
And then you overtook them with your work. But it all came down to your work, not their work. So for me, and I know I've used the quote before, it's that Jimmy Iovine, I think it's at the end of that Dr. Dre, Jimmy Iovine documentary on HBO, where he says, in your career, you got to be like a horse. A horse, you put blinders on it. Why do you put blinders on it? Horse looks to the left, looks to the right, stumbles, it breaks its leg, and you know what happens after that. I've always looked at business the same way. I don't care what anyone else is doing. I care what we're doing. And as long as we can have the best product on with the best talent and the best writers, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Competition is good too, I think.
Yeah,
especially for what you're doing.
It's what the country was built on.
Oh my God. What? Oh. The glad-handing. The Nick Khan with all of the effusive compliments. Oh, you're so smart, Bill. You were so smart when you did this thing, Bill. It was so intelligent when you did this thing, Bill. Meanwhile, he's calling Tony Khan a small boy. He's telling Bill Simmons that while he was sitting next to Shad Khan, who looks like Wario with this mustache, that Tony was sitting in the booster seat in the back seat of his Lamborghini or something like that. Tony Khan is 39 years old. That man will be 41 at some point this year. I mean, the man he's a man. Please, treat this man like a man.
Built on.
Yeah.
Not to get too patriotic on this stuff, but it's why antitrust laws exist. It's why there's Pepsi to Coke or whatever the modern version of that reference is. Everyone should be able to give it a try. I do think anyone can run a business at a loss. That's easy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Anybody can run a business at a loss. Wow. I don't think Tony wants to buy WWE anymore. I think he's going to be very upset about this. He's definitely going to fire Nick Khan. He's definitely going to tell his dad to spend all of his money buying WWE just so he can fire Nick Khan for calling him a kid and saying that he's running AEW at a loss. That's most certainly going to happen now. I would feel awful if I was Tony Khan and nobody knew how old I was and they kept referring to me as a kid, and now they're talking about me running my company at a loss. I would definitely be offended. I would be upset. And I may do a storyline in which WWE are the villains. I may do that storyline 3 or 4 times. I may have my rapper friend who, works for me. I may have him write rhymes about Nick Khan. I may, suggest that. I may drop that bug in his ear. Hey, Max, don't we have any rhymes for Nick Khan? What rhymes with Nick Khan? Yeah, this is 50 Cent level pettiness right here. This is the passive aggressive nature of this, unparalleled passive aggressive is he's not putting respect at all on Tony Khan's name. There's no respect at all on Tony Khan's name. And I gotta say, I'm not disappointed. I'm not disappointed at all. Certainly not gonna take this. Not gonna take this fucking shit. I can't wait. When is their next pay-per-view? When is the next scrum? Fuck the pay-per-view. When is the next scrum? No, it's not. I'm not gonna have to wait that long. He's probably gonna do Busted Open. What is it next Wednesday? He does it every Wednesday, right? Tony Khan. He's probably gonna say something slick on Busted Open next Wednesday, and probably. Wait, Tony Khan is 40. That's he gonna put his Belichick hoodie on, man. He gonna be very frustrated. He gonna put on his Bill Belichick hoodie. He gonna let his 5 o'clock shadow grow in. So maybe he just grew a beard. He wouldn't look so much like a little boy. Maybe he wasn't so bug-eyed. He wouldn't look so much like a little boy. If his hair wasn't so goddamn curly, maybe he wouldn't look so much like a little boy. But it's fucking hilarious. But he definitely gonna put his hoodie on and have his 5 o'clock stubble. He might put on some shades because he might be a little bit nervous. Just a little nervous. He gonna get on Busted Open Radio after Bully gets done yelling about some shit that he's doing on Impact that nobody cares about, and people forgetting that Mark Henry even works in AEW. He's gonna get on there, and Dave LaGreca, supreme ass kisser that he tends to be. Tony, what do you think about what Nick Khan said about you on the Bill Simmons show? I'm not going to take this fucking shit. I've been way too nice with WWE. We've been doing excellent in terms of working together, but the disrespect, I don't think we deserve it. And I'm like, come on. What? Yeah, you deserve it. You're 40. What the fuck? What the fuck? You're 40 and you're spending your inheritance on fucking wrestling shows. I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have did the same thing. I ain't gonna diss Tony too much. I probably would have did the same thing, boss. But goddamn, why is Nick Khan doing this to this man? All right, let's. 2 hours and 30 minutes have blown by. I'm gonna finish this. I might as well go ahead and do the whole 3. I guess the Jay Briscoe thing will have to wait. I'll probably do a video on it in the morning.
It continues to finance it. Try running it.
Are you saying that's AEW?
I don't know. I don't know their books. I haven't seen their books.
They have spent a lot of money.
Look, I know our books.
They have spent a lot of money.
We're off highest grossing revenue in 2022, highest profitability in 2022. Other big factors on why Vince wants to explore a potential alternative now.
And you took Cody Rhodes from them.
How did you like that one?
I liked it until he got hurt.
That's so dirty. How'd you like that one? That was a good one, wasn't it? What? Oh my word. What on earth, bro? God damn.
Hurt.
Yeah.
That that was a tough break, but he's come back soon, I assume.
He's coming back.
Yeah.
Text with him often. He's feeling good.
Do you think he was going to become the guy last year in the company other than Roman?
It certainly felt he was heading in that
Yeah.
direction. And now we'll see. You know, it's announced that he's returning at the Royal Rumble.
Right.
So obviously that's not a secret. We wanted it to be announced. We want people to know that. By the way, Royal Rumble coming up in a couple weeks. Our highest grossing Royal Rumble ever already, with still 2 weeks to go.
What's the location?
San Antonio, Texas.
Mm.
January 27th, which is a Saturday. It's the night before the NFC AFC Conference Championship.
Are the rumors true that The Rock is going to be at WrestleMania?
I can't confirm.
You can't confirm?
Can't confirm or deny any of those. The good thing is for Rock.
Liberace won't be there though. That's
Liberace will not.
Yeah, we already confirmed that.
Yeah, that man is dead.
Billy Martin, yeah.
Unfortunately, Muhammad Ali will
Yeah.
not be there.
A lot of the great ones will not
Bob
be there.
Costas, still living, will not be there. If you remember from WrestleMania 2.
Oh yeah,
A correspondent or backstage reporter.
Costas was in with wrestling.
He was
in the 80s.
He
Yeah,
was in?
he turned on it. I think during the Iraqi War era.
By the way,
That
you're right.
angle. I think that was it. He was out.
You're right, because it was weird when Vince had that interview with him, with it slap the papers. Was that Costas or Catan?
That was
Yeah,
Costas.
the other one with Costas. That was during XFL.
Right.
And I think Costas was mad about the NBC part of that they had XFL on. He felt like it was beneath them. So
I think you're
he
right.
came into it with a little animosity.
Yeah, he was hot. He came in hot. I also think
I give him credit though. He stood up to Vince the whole time.
Yeah,
And
he did
Vince,
not back
Vince
down.
was leaning forward and doing some of his tricks. Vince is an intimidating guy.
Listen, he's strong. He's big.
Yeah.
You know, he's rich. All those things can intimidate a lot of people. I did think it was interesting on that piece. I know it's now 20 plus years ago. There was no mention of the fact that Costas did that WrestleMania 2 hit and was paid for it. So sometimes you see folks with the capital J journalism, you know, condemning someone for their XFL product, but oh, I took your paycheck,
Right.
you know, 20 years prior, whatever it was.
They also
That
worked
was
together in the Letterman. I think it was the 3rd year anniversary. They were two of the hosts. They were two different hospitals.
Dude, that's a crazy
trying to find the
callback.
late night baby.
I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
it was Vince and Larry Bud Melman at one hospital, and Costas at another one. So you have WrestleMania in LA.
Goodness gracious! You know what? I forgot about Bob Costas being involved with wrestling too. I forgot about that too. They do a good job of making me forget stuff. The only thing I thought was Bob Costas was about to get beat up by Vince. That's the only thing. I'm glad he didn't do it, because it certainly wouldn't have made him look good. Because Bob Costas is a very small man. It wouldn't have made Vince look strong to beat up Bob Costas. But it probably would have made Vince feel better, and I think that's probably what he cared about at the time. Hopefully they should be wrapping this up soon.
April 1st and 2nd, SoFi Stadium.
Which has a chance to actually be the biggest WrestleMania.
Yes.
It seems.
We're 90% sold out for both nights. Keep in mind what you already know. We can seat on the field.
Yeah.
Which, you know, for football, obviously they can't. And we haven't announced a match yet. So, again, conveniently located, going into the media rights conversations. I think Los Angeles is the media capital of the world now, certainly of the country. And if you pull Northern California into Los Angeles, I think California is the capital.
Most hotels, perfect WrestleMania location.
Perfect. New matters also.
But this is why from a sales standpoint, you have the ability to sell things when people don't even know who's on the card yet. You have the ability to chew up all these TV hours. We just saw, I think there was this stat about the most watched shows in 2022, and it was like all sports, and it was all NFL, and it's just like sports is like the only reliable thing left, it seems like.
I think
Dick Wolf.
And Dick Wolf. I saw that same thing you saw.
And Shows with Fire.
Shows with Fire work. I think it's like the top 50 highest rated programs were all NFL. Or top 100 all NFL games. It's nuts.
You told me that this would play out this way with football, because I was like,
Wait a minute, they're talking about football now. I don't know about this.
yeah, football. They did the 16
That moment in time. I would think it's some version, and correct me on any of this. Carl Lewis, Mary Lou Retton, John McEnroe, Evel Knievel, Sugar Ray Leonard, all individual sports stars. And okay, yeah, throw in Joe Montana, let's say. And then all of a sudden the league became the league. And I remember in the 80s seeing those ratings go up every year and seeing the cost of the commercial spots go up every year. And ultimately, This was from someone's book. It's not my original quote, but it's, football is what the country is. Baseball is what the country was.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And I think that applies today. So when they got sort of their chaos resolved with the players and the attention was back on the game, boom. That's
Pandemic seemed like it helped too.
Yeah, listen,
Because people wanted football to come back, and they were like, you know what? I'm glad you're still here.
Totally.
You're one of the few constants I still have. Thank you.
Yes. Even you remember Roger Goodell from his basement doing the draft.
Yeah.
Like everyone, I'm not a hardcore NFL fan. I watched every moment of that draft because outside of that and WWE, there was no, and the Jordan, documentary, there was no original content on TV.
Do you miss being an agent?
I loved being an agent. And
because you were very close with clients, and
look, I never had a contract with a client. I never understood that. Think about this in terms of anyone who you get personal services from, your doctor, your lawyer, your CPA, you can fire them at any time. In fact, if you want to change doctors, you don't even need to tell your existing doctor.
Realtors, whoever. Yeah.
I never understood it. These contracts with onerous percentages. If you like my work and you want to pay, and I'll continue with you. And if you don't, that's okay too. Even my initial deal with WWE when I was at CAA was a handshake deal.
Yeah.
Was, hey, if you like our work, you'll pay us. If you don't like us, you don't have to pay us. And that seemed to work. Yeah,
so you miss,
it was fun.
So you miss having the client.
All right. Darren Miles says, how come baseball isn't that popular anymore? I think part of it is baseball is, I've heard it explained to me that baseball is more expensive to play because you have to have a ball, you have to have a glove, you have to have a bat. Then you also need to have a lot of space in which to hit the ball and the ball to, fly into your home runs. You also need a lot of people who are interested in the game. And in the neighborhoods, there's not a lot of people who are interested, poor people who are interested in baseball. Not in the United States anyway. In like the Dominican Republic and in places like that, baseball is still very popular. But in the hood, it's easier to get a basketball and just pretend anything is a hoop. You can play basketball. Get a football. Anything can be the end zone. That's all you need is a football. A soccer ball, similar. All you need is something that could be the end zone or the net. But baseball, there needs to be a lot of space. It needs to be, gloves and everything. And plus, I think, all the strikes, and baseball is a non-contact sport. Basketball is low contact. And football used to be full contact, but it was, for a while, football and boxing were the two most violent sports in the United States, and they were two most popular. People like violence. The UFC hasn't quite broken through to become as popular as boxing, as much as they would like to. I think they're going for a different business model. But baseball, I think it's just too expensive to play. Like, to get in is just too much. Also, baseball games are typically in the middle of the day. For some reason, like when I was growing up, that used to be like so weird to me. Like the Tigers game would be on like 3 p.m. Not prime time weekends, but the middle of the day, 2:00 in the afternoon, the Tigers game is on. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's like Tuesday. Why are the Tigers playing in the middle of the day on Tuesday? And who the fuck is going to watch them? What kind of job do you have that you could take a Tuesday off to go see the Tigers? That's crazy. But I'm not sure if that's the same case anymore because I don't watch baseball. But it seems like we're done talking about WWE here for Nick Khan. There's 11 minutes left in Bill Simmons' podcast. I don't know. I think we've reached the most important bits. So I'm going to shut this down. The Bill Simmons podcast, I'm going to shut it down. Since I plan to do a long show anyway, do you guys want to talk about Jay Briscoe now, or do you want me to just do a video on Jay Briscoe? I'll give people a couple of seconds to figure it out, and let me know what to do, what y'all want to do. All right, let's go with 250. What do y'all want to do? Y'all want to wrap it up, or y'all want to go with push through and see what's going on with Jay Briscoe? For the record, I don't like this power slap thing. I think I talked about it before. I'm not a big fan. It bombed in the ratings too, which is great because then maybe it'll get canceled, and people won't fucking die for getting their head cracked to watch from power slap. It's a stupid. It's not even a sport, for Christ's sake. It's embarrassing. There needs to be some level of defense in order for it to be a sport, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So we got one vote for doing the Briscoe thing now. Do I have a second to this motion? Anybody's want to second the motion? Give it a couple of more seconds. I gotta use the bathroom too, dog. I don't know, man. It seems nobody else is willing to second this. I guess everybody's kind of tired. It is almost midnight. Darren Gordon Hill wants to come in and second the motion. One more and it shall pass. One more. Who else wants to jump out there and say, you want to just do the Briscoe thing now? Anybody else? Okay, Darren Miles. All right, so let's do Briscoe right now. Okay. As it was announced on Wednesday, January the 18th, Jamin Pugh, otherwise known as Jay Briscoe, died in a car accident in Delaware. So in this portion of the video, we're going to be discussing not only the story that led to what happened in the case, how he ended up dead and his daughters were in critical condition. We're also going to be discussing the lack of tribute for Jay Briscoe on AEW television. We will also be discussing why there was a lack of tribute. And there's another story I want to read. And I will also, I would maybe do some of the tributes, but I did not save them all. So that's probably why I wanted to do a video on it. It's just so I could read some of the tributes, like Seth Rollins and Sami Zayn's and Kevin Owens tributes. But here's the story. It says, State Police investigating two-vehicle fatal accident. This was posted Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. It's from dsp.delaware.gov. It says, the Delaware State Police are investigating a fatal accident that occurred in Laurel late yesterday afternoon that resulted in the deaths of two people. On January 17th, 2023, at approximately 5:09 p.m., a 2019 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 was traveling westbound on Laurel Road, just west of Goose Nest Road. At the same time, a 2016 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 was traveling eastbound on Laurel Road in the same vicinity. For unknown reasons, the driver of the Silverado 1500 pickup truck failed to remain in her lane, crossed the center line, and entered the eastbound lane of Laurel Road, directly into the path of the Silverado 2500. This resulted in a head-on collision between the two pickup trucks in the eastbound lane. That's frightening. That's awful. The driver of the 1500 Silverado, identified as 27-year-old Lillian Turnahan of Frankfort, Delaware, was wearing her seatbelt. The driver of the Silverado 2500, identified as 38-year-old Jamin Pugh of Laurel, Delaware, was not wearing his seatbelt. Both drivers were pronounced dead at the scene. The two passengers in Pugh's pickup truck, identified as his 12-year-old daughter and 9-year-old daughter, were both properly restrained. Both girls were taken by an ambulance to an area hospital where they were admitted and are in critical condition. Alcohol involvement in the crash is unknown. No other vehicles were involved in this collision. The roadway was closed for approximately 4 hours while the scene was investigated and cleared. The Delaware State Police Troop 7 Collision Reconstruction Unit continues to investigate this incident. Troopers are asking anyone who witnessed this collision to please contact, and then it gives them some contact information. So, the young lady, something happened to her, and she crossed the center line into his lane and crashed into his car. He was not wearing his seatbelt, and thus he died. His daughters were wearing seatbelts, and they are still in critical condition. The other driver was wearing a seatbelt, and she also ended up dying. So it didn't seem to matter whether you were wearing a seatbelt or not. This was a bad, bad deal. It is an absolutely awful scenario, of course. You have to ask the question, what happened? Why did she all of a sudden cross the center line? Is it possible she was texting? Is it possible she was looking away? Maybe she was on the phone. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe she had some kind of medical condition. Maybe she couldn't see. I don't know. But what a tragic, awful story. And from this story, we lost Jay Briscoe. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. So from Delaware.com, it says, Delaware pro wrestler killed in head-on Laurel crash, remembered as beloved coach and father. Jamin Pugh, a professional wrestler from Laurel, who competed in the Ring of Honor for 2 decades under the stage name Jay Briscoe, died in a car crash Tuesday night. He was 38. His daughter, Gracie, and Jaylee were also injured in the head-on crash, and the driver of the other car was killed. Jonna Pugh, Jamin's mother and member of the Laurel School District Board of Education, said that both of Jamin's daughters have had surgeries, and doctors aren't sure if one will be able to walk again. Jamin was a, quote, family guy, Jonna said. He would do cheerleading dances with his daughters, even putting on a bow in his hair to match them. He just spent the weekend at one of their cheer competitions in North Carolina, and Jonna said she would hear him cheering in the background of the videos he sent her. Since his death Tuesday night, Jonna said she's received an outpouring of messages and support from people her son met all around the world. On social media, many Delawareans have changed their profile pictures to the silhouette of a dog with "Pray for the Pews" underneath it. What happened in the fatal crash? And they give more. They just tell the same information I just read. It says Jamin Pugh was beloved in Laurel community. Though he was well known as a pro wrestler, Pugh's athletic exploits began at Laurel High, and he continued to influence area athletes. He was heavily beloved. Kevin Walmsley, the Laurel High athletic director, said Wednesday. He was at school almost every day. It's a huge tragedy for our community. Pugh was a first-team All-Henlopen Conference Southern Division fullback and linebacker, an honorable mention All-State linebacker before graduating from Laurel in 2022 on teams coached by his father, Mike. More recently, he was an assistant coach on the Laurel Middle School football team on which his son Gannon played, and also coached youth basketball in the town. In addition, Pugh regularly visited with and inspired Lowell athletes, Walmsley said. Quote, with the kids at practice teaching skills, techniques, some of them knew he was a star in professional wrestling, and some didn't know that, Walmsley said. But he treated every kid the same, and he's going to be missed. You saw him at the local store. He gave back. All the kids knew him, just a true motivator. Laurel School District announced on Facebook on Tuesday night that all schools will be closed on Wednesday due to an unthinkable tragedy in our community. The district, which is slated to reopen Thursday, asked people to, quote, please keep the Pugh family in your thoughts and prayers. The pro wrestling community reacts using the names Jay and Mark Briscoe. Pugh and his brother Mark were a tag team duo and original participants in Ring of Honor, founded in 2022 as one of the several American professional wrestling promoters, along with World Wrestling Entertainment and others. They were 13-time ROH Tag Team Champions and recently won the tag team title back in December in a double dog collar match against FTR's Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood. Along with being crowd favorites while traveling the U.S., the Briscoes are often earned the admiration of fellow wrestlers, said Rob Begley, who has been a pro wrestler for 20 years. Competing as Vic Delicious? What? Vic Delicious? No, you cannot put... This is too somber, too melancholy a moment for me to come across the name Vic Delicious. You know what? I need wrestlers to grow the fuck up. Alright? Wrestling needs to grow up. This fucking sucks. This name sucks. Alright? I just leave his real name in here. We don't need to know who he is. Vic Delicious. This is nonsense. Vic Delicious. Bagley wrestled the Briscoes for the first time at the National Wrestling Alliance's Crockett Cup in Nashville in March. Quote, those guys, Mark and Jay, have a reputation of professional wrestling as being the absolute standard. A father of three himself, Bagley was shocked and saddened to hear Pugh's death. Quote, it was a huge opportunity for us meeting them and realizing their professionalism and willingness to make us look like equals and challenge us to come up with the best professional wrestling match that we could come up with. It was really cool. Bagley said the Briscoes earned that sterling reputation on the circuit by always having, quote, the best, absolute best match of the night, whether there's 5 people there or 50,000. Those guys wrestled all around the country, making a name for themselves in a way that traditional professional wrestlers do. The article continues, they did that, he added, without the benefit of being on national television, which he called, quote, a credit to their hard work, and the fact that, quote, they never gave up following their dream. The Briscoes were inducted into the inaugural class of the ROH Hall of Fame last year. Among those particularly devastated by Pugh's death was Kerry Silkin, who owned Ring of Honor from 2004 to 2011 and developed a close bond with the brothers. Silkin tweeted after hearing the news, I lost one of my kids and the world lost a great man. Jay and Mark were Ring of Honor lifers. A lot of guys went to WWE and the Briscoes were happy and made a good living staying in Ring of Honor. Professional wrestling is theater that involves brutal athletic and acrobatics movements, Silkin said. The Pugh brothers, the Briscoes, to Silkin mastered those difficult choreographed skills. Silkin said they brought a sense of as real as it could get. Whether it's in the theater or sports or business, you hear about the it factor. They had it. Beautiful. That was a very well written piece. It told a really good story too, because I didn't know a lot about Jay Briscoe's background. Now we get into some of the things that are kind of unfair. Some of the things that I don't really care for. All right. There were a lot of people making a lot of comments about Jay Briscoe. The number one comment, of course, that has been floating around is that AEW is not allowed to do a tribute to Jay Briscoe because of his previous comments about homosexuals. For those of you who are not familiar with what he said, I did a video on the Briscoe brothers. You can look it up. The part that got Jay into so much trouble was the fact that he threatened to shoot anybody who taught his children about homosexuality. This was in 2013 or thereabouts. So it was 10 years ago. So because of this, the Briscoes were banned essentially from Warner Media. Despite the fact that they were featured on ROH and even featured in the main event of ROH, as soon as Tony Khan purchased it, they've never made an appearance, and they've never been allowed to make an appearance. And in keeping with that, they also did not allow AEW to do any tributes to Jay Briscoe. So that led to a lot of people being upset that Warner Media will not even let up even a tiny bit, not even a tiny bit, to see the guy died. The guy died. So we're going to play some audio from Meltzer and Alvarez, and they're going to talk about this thing.
The horrible news everybody is well aware of by now, and that is the death of Jay Briscoe at the age of 38 in a automobile accident. Been tributes throughout the wrestling world over the last couple of days. The Dynamite show, NXT, everybody on their Twitter. There was a Jay Briscoe Ring of Honor tribute show that was taped after the Rampage tapings tonight, which will be available very soon on Honor Club. And absolutely horrible, horrible story. And Dave, what's going on?
I don't know. It's just a horrible story. Yes. So he was he bringing his daughters home from school?
I had first heard that he was taking them home from school, but I think he was actually taking them to a cheer practice or an after-school activity.
Okay. And it was a 2-lane road, and somebody swerved basically into his lane and hit them head on. The driver of the other car and Jay were both killed, and his daughters were both very seriously injured. And I heard like pretty much no other details. Today past, it's a little better, but I know the oldest daughter, Grace, who's 13, couldn't move, I guess, from the waist down, and she had surgery done today. And the other daughter was also in pretty rough shape. I mean, they're in critical condition, so it's absolute tragedy.
I played the wrong audio clip. Let's play this one.
They were signed, by Tony Khan, and he was unable to get them on television. And if you watch tonight's show and you were expecting something, and I know a lot of people were, something akin to the Brody Lee show, and obviously that didn't happen. There was basically there was a graphic at the start of the show, and then at the very end of the show, there was a mention by Excalibur. A lot of the guys had armbands, a lot of them, but there was not any kind of big tribute because they were not allowed by Warner Media to do one. So they filmed a 1-hour show in Fresno tonight. That'll be on Honor Club. They will be doing another tribute show, which will be the first, when they finally do the Ring of Honor television show, the first show will feature a lot of Jay matches, and the tribute show will as well when it's all put together. I'm not sure what day it'll be out, but there'll be another one. And then Supercard of Honor, there will also be, kind of like a memorial to Jay on that show or something, to honor Jay at the Supercard of Honor show in Los Angeles in late March at the Galen Center, USC.
All right, so we get that Warner Media is not a fond, but he's going to go. We got a third Meltzer clip here, a third one. This one is going to be the one I'm probably going to end up talking about, because this is the one where he's going to talk about the hypocrisy and his problems with Warner Media.
like when Power Slap started tonight, I mean, the first thing on the show, I mean, Dana's all over the show, but the first thing is, you know, the great thing about this is that if you don't like somebody, you can slap the shit out of them. And it's like, are we really opening the show with this week? Is that, you know, I mean, it's like when he filmed it, it had a totally different connotation, but this is the same station. They will not let a tribute show for Jay Briscoe go on, who just passed away, that the entire wrestling world is mourning. But they won't edit that line out of, you know, the show that aired. You know, that line was like 3 minutes after the show aired. You know, the wrestling show ended was the line on Power Slap, and Dana's all over the show, and you're watching, you know, Power Slap we'll talk about later, but it's just so many things, you know, and listening to so much bullshit today, you know, about all these things, and it's like these guys, you know, these guys never, and Mark never even did anything wrong, but I mean, he wanted to stay as a team, and, you know, I mean, like, AEW did want to push them. I mean, they wanted them to be on the roster. It couldn't happen. They wanted them on the pay-per-views this year.
All right, he's caping for AEW near the end. I mean, we don't really need to go too much into that. I will say this. What Jay Briscoe said was over the top. It was a bit extreme. It was a bit extreme. That being said, was it enough to cancel him over to the point where he absolutely, positively cannot be mentioned on this show at all, period? I am 100% against that. It's not even about whether I agreed with what he said or not. That's not even the point. The point is, a man is dead. His children is injured. They wanted to do something to help with the grieving of what was going on during this time. That's what they wanted to do. That's where their heart was. It was not about necessarily celebrating somebody that you think that you shouldn't celebrate. He's not Chris Benoit, all right? He didn't go around gunning down gay people or shooting up gay clubs or anything like that. He wasn't a horrible, terrible guy. He was just a guy who made a stupid comment, a really dumb comment that he shouldn't have made. Even if you agree with it, you don't go as far as he went. And I say plenty of times that he probably went too far. That being said, the degree to which Warner Media went to, where they banned this guy, you have to ask the question, where is the line in the sand? So you see a lot of AEW fans are running around. They're talking about guys like Jay Lethal, who have rape accusations. Jay Lethal has been accused of rape by 2 different women. Or sexual assault, or sexual harassment. My bad. It was sexual harassment. It wasn't rape. Darby Allin was accused of rape by a woman. Mike Tyson was a convicted rapist. There is video of Dana White smacking his wife. There's all sort of assorted drug abusers, alcoholics, etc., on the roster. People who actually have harmed other people. And Warner Media isn't blocking any of those people. Now look, I fully understand that Warner Media as an entity has whatever right they want to ban whoever they want from their platform. They can do whatever it is that they desire. That being said, I think it is incredibly tasteless to not make an exception now that the man is dead. It's one thing to refuse to promote him and put money in his pocket because you feel that what he did was so egregious. I can recognize that. I can appreciate that. What I cannot appreciate is the vindictiveness that even in death, what he did was so wrong that you can't give him any credit. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me. That goes beyond what he said. It goes beyond the Confederate flags. It goes beyond. And I feel that Warner Media is indeed being a hypocrite. I think that Warner Media is being unnecessarily cruel. I do think that they're being stupid. You know, I just really think it's stupid. And it's embarrassing to have such virtue signaling goofballs in corporate positions in the United States. Let's think about that for a moment. Now, again, we'll say again, Kerry Silkin is a homosexual. Kerry Silkin owned Ring of Honor from 2004 to 2011. That's 7 years. Jay Briscoe worked for a gay man for 7 years. It is nonsensical to think that he hated gays. And he worked for a gay man for 7 years. It is let's not even to even think that what Briscoe said, even though I say it's in the extremes, to think that it's something that you can't apologize for. That we have a society that has absolutely no forgiveness, that is made and based off of bitterness and resentment. Even if you dislike the guy, the best way to change hearts and minds is actually through understanding and forgiveness. But instead, it becomes an eye for an eye situation. You reject us, we reject you. Right? In which case, people, most of the time, they double down. And now, in Jay Briscoe's case, he didn't double down. And sometimes it makes me wish that he should have. Maybe he should have doubled down. If he was going to get canceled anyway, maybe he should have doubled down. But at the same point in time, he probably wouldn't have been the person that he is if he had. So to me, Warner Media not wanting to have the Briscoe brothers on the air is their business. But I'm absolutely, positively not a fan of their tactics or of their standards. And I'm pretty sure if I went through the Warner Media roster, looked at the TV shows and looked at the actors or actresses that were on it, or the movies that they show on TNT or TBS or whatever, how many of the actors or actresses you're promoting on television shows and in movies have done horrible, deplorable things, been part of all kind of cults, sex cults, and all the other kind of dumb shit, and you still showing that movie and that TV show. I find that to be disturbing. I find that to be quite disturbing. So that wasn't the only thing that came out that was stupid. What another stupid thing that came out was that Triple H came out and said this, that Jay Briscoe was an incredible performer who created a deep connection with wrestling fans across the globe. My condolences to the family and friends of Jay Briscoe. Simple, easy peasy Japanesey. Pretty simple, right? Why did Brian Last, the tag team partner of Jim Cornette, jump on Triple H for not hiring Jay Briscoe before? It was pretty damn stupid. It was stupid of him to tweet that. I went and looked, and it's not up anymore. I'm wondering if he took it down. And that's I'm thinking that he maybe he took it down. And because it wasn't, you know, it's inconsiderate. And something tells me that he took it down. Because now I can't find it anywhere. Or it might have been fake. Who knows? Let me take a look. Let me make sure it was real first, because it might not even been real. But it seemed to me like Brian Last was gonna call out Triple H for being fake because he didn't want to hire Jay Briscoe, or hell, according to Jay Briscoe, WWE tried to hire them numerous times. That WWE offered them all kinds of deals, NXT deals and stuff like that. And the Briscoes were perfectly happy with Ring of Honor, and that's where they wanted to stay. So I'm questioning what would make you want to tweet that out to Triple H. Because it takes two to make a deal. Okay? WWE can offer the Briscoes a contract. But if they don't want to take it, then they don't take it. It seemed to me that was the case. That people wanted the Briscoes in WWE. There was certain people who did want them there. But the Briscoes didn't want to be there. I'm concerned about that. You know? Because that just goes to show that people are not thinking. You know? And it's embarrassing. Like, that's also embarrassing. Like, this is a situation in which children are in the hospital and a man is dead and a woman is dead, and we take that opportunity to start dunking on people. I can only hope that it wasn't a real tweet that I saw. And I'm looking for it now because I really want to read exactly what he said, but I'm not seeing it. And no, it seems like nobody screenshotted it. So maybe it wasn't real, or maybe I saw it and he took it down very quickly. I don't know. I'm not sure. But the last thing he tweeted out was a give and go, or give, send, go for the Pugh family. Which I know that a lot of wrestlers were very kind in donating to. And a lot of them were his friends. Which is great. The desire to kick people while they're down. This goes to AJ3's comment here. It shows low morality and low integrity. There was, of course, somebody out reaching for attention saying that there's no reason to care about some homophobic wrestler who died or whatever. It's stupid. You know? It's just stupid. It's dumb. Right? It's as dumb as it gets. It's as dumb as it gets. It's that kind of attention-seeking horseshit that made Twitter absolutely toxic. And what more can we do about this? It's been an awful couple of days. I pray for his daughters. You know, they've already lost their dad. It would really, I would say suck, but suck is kind of facetious. It would be devastating if you lose your father and your ability to walk. And I have been proud of seeing all of the wrestlers who worked with them, some of them who worked with them, some of them didn't, who have taken up the cause of Jay Briscoe, not to, you know, change anybody's opinion of him, but basically talking about their good feelings, you know, to give him credit, you know, for the work that he did. To show him some appreciation, considering there are so many people out there who are going about their day attacking him, attacking what he said, thinking that what he said at one moment was all he's allowed to say. And then we get to the ridiculous. The ridiculous is the card that was put out by Tony Khan on what the show was going to be, the tribute show. The tribute show is, now I'll give Tony Khan some credit, it was hastily put together, but it probably could have put more effort into it. So here's the show. Wheeler Yuta versus Hagane Shino. Story time with Adam Cole. Marina Shafir versus Mighty Myra. Eddie Kingston versus QT Marshall. Athena versus Madison Rain. Juice Robinson versus Brandon Cutler. Yuka Sakazaki versus Sandra Moon. And Claudio Castagnoli versus Christopher Daniels. I swear to God, he deserves a better tribute show than this. He deserves it. Look, this show is going to be recorded. It's going to be uploaded to the Ring of Honor YouTube show. It's also going to be on the Ring of Honor Club. This card is awful. This is awful. This is an awful card. Now, Claudio versus Christopher Daniels, that's fine. That's fine. That's a match worthy of a spot. If you say, I want to do a tribute show, why not wait? Okay? Why not wait and maybe tape one over the weekend or something? You know? I understand that Tony supposedly flew in some of these talents because they weren't at the tapings, and he was just trying to put something together. That's not how you do a tribute. You don't put together an obituary just by grabbing random stuff and throwing it on the screen. That's not how you do things. You should have done a tribute show featuring your Ring of Honor talent. All of the guys who, especially some of the guys that you didn't sign, like Rhett Titus, guys like Kenny King, guys who was in Ring of Honor for a long time. And then some of the guys that you do have, like Dalton Castle. You put that together. You know, you put together what a Ring of Honor show looked like. You know, and then if you want to feature the women because they want to show their part, okay, that's fine. But the card that he put together, it's awful. And I know I hate to be the guy that's going to criticize the tribute show because it is put together, you know, kind of on the fly. I gotta tell you, it's not a smart decision. There's no need to rush it. You know, there's no need to rush it. You could have did a Jay Briscoe tribute package with highlights and of his promos. And that was some of the fun stuff because I'm not really that deep into Ring of Honor lore. So a lot of that stuff could have been fun to put together. You know, some old Briscoes promos, like the ones that had the shotguns or whatever. That could have been fun to put up on YouTube. You know, to show that what kind of characters they were, what kind of guy he was. Put up a couple of free matches. You know, Briscoes versus, you know, them fighting each other. The fight on the farm. That's already up on YouTube, I think. They had other matches that you could have put up on YouTube, or them wrestling each other, or them wrestling other tag teams. You could have had other things. You didn't have to put together this card. And then for people to sit around and say, I don't know when the card is going to be released. Do you really care? Do you really care? Claudio and Christopher Daniels is the only match that I feel really embodies, you know, what Jay Briscoe was about. How about just having a tribute match? I mean, when Owen Hart died, WCW didn't do an entire tribute show. They had an Owen Hart tribute match, and I felt like that was appropriate. It was Benoit versus Bret the Hitman Hart. His brother wrestled. So you could do a Briscoe's tribute match, and if maybe Jay was the one, and that's what it sounds like when Messler was talking, that Mark isn't banned, but Jay is. That maybe you have Mark Briscoe when he can. I know his birthday was literally the day after his brother died. And then Jay's birthday is next week. I think it's on the 25th. So it's next Wednesday. You know, you could have done all of that together. A birthday celebration / you could have made it like a week of Jay Briscoe, where you put out promos for a little while, you put up a match or two, you put up some packages, maybe some videos like Danielson talking about his time working with Briscoe, Samoa Joe. You could put that up on the screen, up on YouTube, let these guys just vent and get it out of their system. Similar to what they did with the Ring of Honor show. Right? You could have done that for a week. You know, but this show, I don't even want to support this. Like, I don't even want to watch it. And that feels terrible. Because it's an awful fucking show. It's full of people. I have no idea who these people are. I don't know if he ever worked with any of these people, if he was friends with any of these people. When WWE does these tribute shows for like Benoit or Eddie Guerrero or whatever, they always gave their friends good placement. You know, Ray got to wrestle Shawn Michaels at the, what was it? Was it the Eddie Guerrero tribute show? Like, cool. Fucking cool. It was the only match I remember from that whole thing. I think Benoit wrestled Triple H in the main event of that first Eddie Guerrero tribute show. I think those are the only two matches I remember. I'm telling you, I'm not a fan of what they're decided to do. And I get it. It's a rush job. I get it. You want to try to do something while it's timely. But, brother, you could have waited. Just wait. Just say we're going to do a special Ring of Honor taping. Instead of doing Dark. I mean, Dark is what, taped on Mondays or something like that. Instead of doing Dark, we're going to spend the weekend. We're going to call in some of the guys who were friends of Jay Briscoe. They're going to cut a short promo saying, you know, how much they're going to miss him, tell a short story about him, even ask WWE if you would let, you know, Rollins read his story on there, or Kevin Owens or whatever. Say, we're putting it up for free. We're not, you know, making anybody pay for it. And maybe you don't even monetize the video on YouTube. You know, so WWE won't feel like they're getting gypped. But you get in everybody in on it. Impact had more of a tribute to Jay Briscoe this week than AEW did. And that's because of Warner Media. Gotta say I'm disappointed. Gotta say I'm not in a good spirits about Warner Media right now. I'm not feeling you, Warner Media. You suck. You know? And Tony Khan really needs to get it together. It's just, what more can you say? It's just been, whenever tragedy occurs, disappointment is right around the corner. You know, a video package wouldn't have taken you that long to put together. You could have put the video package together during the show. I mean, you have billions of dollars. And say, we're going to put together a tribute package. We will be putting together a tribute show at some point in the future. You know, we're going to ask former Ring of Honor talent to participate. Maybe do a Jay Briscoe Battle Royal, or, you know, Tag Team Cup or something like that in order to keep his name alive. You know, it's going to be, or say, hey, we're going to monetize the video, but all the money's going to go to the family. Something. You know, I know a lot of people want me to rant about how terrible the, you know, woke idiots in Warner Media are, and we already know this. We already know that these woke idiots, you know, they'll fuck up anything. But I'm more sad than angry. You know, I feel like Jay got gypped. I feel like Jay's entire life has been strip mined down to a tweet that he probably made drunk, you know, 10 years ago. And you have to think about it. Is that the measure of a man's life? You make one fatal mistake that didn't even kill anybody or hurt anybody at all, and all of a sudden that's all you are? That's all you are. Meanwhile, people who do far worse are forgiven. Sometimes even without their asking. It's embarrassing. It's truly awful. All right, we had 3 hours, 37 minutes. It's time to wrap it up. Oh boy, this was a supersized video. This is probably gonna be my last Friday off for a while. Starting my new position. I will be working on Fridays now. I'll be working on Tuesdays now. But that just means I'll probably have to start the show a little bit earlier in order to get some time. Anyway, thanks you for your time. If you're coming in late, or if you're started this video on repeat, I thank you as well. AJ3, Eric Mack, Leith LZ, Top Dog, Darren Miles, everybody who I've seen, Darren Gordon Hill, everybody I've seen throughout tonight, WG Phil, Ninja, Apostle of JBL, Luke Chan, G Coalition Brother number 17, Ben Get It In, and so many others. Leith, I think Leith LZ already, JS, so many of you guys, TN Pyro, who stopped by. I'm him 24/7, Ali Hankerson, Lord Kratos, everybody, Virgo Rebel Penguin, thank you. I will talk to everybody. Feel free to join the Discord. Conversation will continue. They're talking about Impact in there, I think, at this point. I started doing something else. I'm going to finish Impact. I'm gonna watch it probably tomorrow morning. But I watched the opening segment and it was like, I'll get back to it. All right, thank you and good night. See you guys later.